Tonight, we enter a different cupboard under the stairs. Not the one you remember. Not the quiet dark where a lonely boy dreams of flying on a broom he has never seen. This cupboard is louder. It is full of breathing that is not his own. You are with him when it happens. 10-year-old Harry jerks awake on the thin mattress, fingers clawing at his throat, eyes wide and blind in the dark. He is gasping for air he has already lost, choking on water that is not in his lungs, reaching for a wand he does not own. A woman is drowning in a stone basin far away, a curse twisting her face, and Harry feels every second of her death as if it were carved into his bones. Then it is gone. The cupboard is silent again. His heart is not. This is important because in this version of the story, Harry Potter did not only survive Voldemort, he became the vessel for every death Voldemort ever caused. Every flash of green light, every whispered killing curse, every fall, every scream. The magic that rebounded in Godric's Hollow did more than leave a scar. It stitched Harry's mind to the graveyard of Voldemort's victims, turning his childhood into a catalogue of endings. In canon, the boy in the cupboard dreams of a blinding green light and a high, cold laugh. The images are vague, blurred by time and grief. Here, there is nothing vague. Here, the visions are precise, cinematic, merciless. Harry does not just hear his mother's voice, he sees the exact angle of her fall. The way her hair fans across the nursery floor, the way James's hand twitches once and then never again. He knows the crack of bone on stone when the Pruitt brothers make their last stand. He knows the smell of burning when Marlene McKinnon's house becomes her grave. Night after night, his accidental magic drags him into strangers' final moments. He watches a young Auror named Meadows die in a corridor lined with shattered portraits. He feels the Longbottom's torture like ice poured directly into his veins. He wakes with names on his tongue that no one in Privet Drive has ever spoken aloud. The Dursleys call them nightmares. They are not nightmares, they are records. No one knows this is happening. Not Dumbledore, who had once stood over too many graves and thought the worst was already behind them. Not Hagrid, who had carried baby Harry from the ruins and believed the scar was only a mark of survival. Not Sirius, who had screamed in Azkaban, certain his godson was merely alone. Not haunted by every death Sirius failed to prevent. So the question becomes, what does it do to a child to know more about death than any aura, any unspeakable, before he has ever held a wand? How far does this connection go? Does every new killing curse tear him from sleep, or is there some darker pattern, some buried charm gone wrong on that Halloween night? In the cupboard, Harry lies awake, staring into the dark that is no longer empty. His lips move, barely audible, as if reciting a litany or an apology. Pruitt, Bones, Meadows, names he has never heard in the Muggle world. Names that will one day stare back at him from war memorials and whispered stories in Hogwarts corridors. The grave was empty of peace for the boy who lived. He was already becoming something else. The boy who watched them die, and when Hagrid finally knocks on the door, Harry will not just be entering a world of magic. He will be walking into a history he has already seen end, over and over again. The grave was empty of peace, and the story everyone thought they knew was already wrong. Harry Potter still believed his parents had died in a car crash. That was the Dursleys' truth, repeated until it hardened into something like stone. But beneath that lie, something older and darker coiled in his scar. When Voldemort's killing curse first rebounded, Harry's accidental magic did not only protect his life. It reached back along the path of the curse and bound itself to that specific death magic, stitching his small, stunned consciousness to every life the green light had ever ended. This is important. Harry does not see the future. He is not granted clean prophecy or clear warning. What he receives, beginning years before Hogwarts, are echoes. The last heartbeat, the last image, the last fractured thought of anyone Voldemort has killed with that spell. A child who thinks he was unwanted becomes the unwilling archive of a war he has never been told existed. At 8, he wakes choking on water he has never swallowed, because somewhere a man died in a flooded cellar, the curse striking as the tide rose around him. At 9, he claws at his own face in the dark, feeling a mask that is not his torn away, because he is reliving the final instant of a Death Eater unmasked and executed by his master. At 10, he dreams of a cottage that is not Privet Drive and a woman's voice crying for a baby that is not him. And he does not know that he is watching the end of the Pruitt line. He carries names he has never heard. He wakes with words in languages he cannot speak. He feels the Cruciatus tearing through the Longbottom's nerves as Voldemort watches, amused and cold. And he vomits in the school toilets the next day, punished for making a scene. He believes, with the terrible certainty only children possess, that something in him is causing this, that by surviving, he has become a walking grave of other people's endings. The Dursleys see none of the pattern, only the symptoms. Harry's screaming fits in the smallest bedroom, the way he flinches from sudden flashes of light because they rhyme too perfectly with a jet of grain, the names he mutters into his pillow, pleading with people he has never met to run, to hide, to duck. They do not ask why. Questions would imply he is a boy, not a problem. Not Dumbledore, who had left him on that doorstep with a letter and a plan, hears those midnight cries. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from real rubble once, knows that Harry is still trapped under invisible wreckage. Not Sirius, who had sworn to protect his godson, is there to shake him awake and say the word that matters most: innocent. So the Dursleys call it freakishness. They lock the door. They snap. They starve. They strike. Every punishment confirms what the visions whisper. He is wrong. He is broken. He is somehow to blame. The grave was empty, but the boy is full of ghosts. The magic itself is evolving. At first the deaths come as scattered nightmares, shards of color and sound. Then, as Voldemort claws his way slowly back toward a body, the link strengthens. Images lengthen into scenes. Voices become distinct. Harry begins to recognize faces that will one day stare back at him from moving portraits and Daily Prophet photographs. He starts to see the same wand, the same cold red eyes, the same terrible green charm again and again. This is important because it will not remain private. The moment Harry can describe a wand he has never seen, a man he has never met, a torture he should not remember, Dumbledore's careful distance begins to fracture. The headmaster who wanted to wait until 11, who believed in slow revelation and controlled truth, will be forced to act when the boy who lived starts speaking fluent death. And this power will not stay in the cupboard when the Hogwarts letters arrive. On the train, when Ron Weasley offers a sandwich and easy friendship, Harry will already know the smell of burning hair and the echo of a woman's last laugh that belongs to a red-headed family. When Hermione Granger frowns at his flinches and his two old eyes, she will sense a mystery that no book explains. Every relationship is warped by knowledge he never asked for. Lily was a charms prodigy, but even she could never have designed this. This is not a gift. It is not a clever plan. It is a slow-motion haunting that turns the familiar Hogwarts story into something darker and stranger. The boy who watched them die is walking toward a castle that will feel, from the first night, less like a school and more like a battlefield he recognizes from other people's last breaths. And somewhere, in a grave that was never truly filled, the old legend of the boy who lived waits to be rewritten by the only witness who saw how it really ended. The grave was empty, and somewhere in Little Whinging, a boy who did not know that fact yet lay rigid in a narrow bed, waiting for the green light. It always began the same way. A woman's scream, high and breaking. A flash that was not quite a color, more a wound in the air. The feeling of falling without moving. For years, this had been the whole story of Harry's nights. The single scene that confirmed what the Dursleys said about the car crash, even when the pieces did not fit. Cars did not make that kind of light. Metal did not sound like a wand snapping the sky. On this night, the pattern broke. This is important. The scream came, but it was not the same voice. The light came, but it struck from the side, not hidden. Harry felt his body twist in sleep as if his neck were trying to follow something that was not there, and suddenly the cottage was gone. The cot, the broken roof, the smoking ruins of Godric's Hollow that he had never consciously seen vanished like a charm lifted from his mind. He he was somewhere else. A field at dusk. The air smelled of wet grass and iron. A red-haired man, older than the vague father shape Harry sometimes imagined, was dueling three figures in masks. His wand moved with desperate precision, each spell a streak of light that Harry somehow knew was powerful, practiced, brave. It did not matter. There were too many of them. The curse that hit him was green. Harry saw it from inside the man's skull. Terror, not his own, and yet it flooded him, raw and absolute. A last, useless thought of a sister he would not see again. The ground rushing up, the wand slipping from fingers that had held it since school. Then, nothing. Harry woke with his own hand clenched as if around a wand he did not own. His throat open on a shout he did not remember choosing. This was not the car crash. This was not his mother's scream. This was not even a memory, because he had never seen that man before in his life. And yet, he knew the texture of the man's fear as intimately as he knew the cupboard's darkness. He was 8 years old, and someone real had just died inside his head. Not Dumbledore, who had theories about magic and sacrifice. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from a ruined house. Not Sirius, who had sworn in a cell to protect a child he could not reach. None of them were here to name Gideon Pruitt, to say the word Death Eater, to explain why Harry's scar burned cold under his fringe. So Harry made a plan. He stole a school exercise book from Dudley's cast-offs and, by torchlight, began to write. Not dreams, names when he had them. Hair colors, places, the angle of wands. The exact feeling of each ending. He was trying, with a child's stubbornness, to prove that these were not nightmares, but windows, that the story was larger than the cupboard, larger than the lie about twisted metal on a wet road. Lily was a charms prodigy, but Harry did not know that. He only knew that every night the list grew longer, that every new death felt closer. more precise, less like a distant echo and more like a hand reaching for him. On the last line of the page, his pencil hesitated. In the vision's fading dark, just before waking, a woman's voice had whispered his name, not screamed it, whispered it, as if calling him back. Harry, as if she were alive, as if these deaths were not random at all, but circling him with intent. He underlined his own name twice, heart-pounding, and wondered, terrified, who would die next and what exactly they had to do with him. From 8 to 10, Harry's life became a calendar of endings. The dates on the school timetable meant nothing to him compared to the dates in his head. The night of the woman with the broken glasses, the night of the boy with ink-stained fingers, the night of the old man who died whispering a name Harry did not yet know. He would lie in the narrow bed in the cupboard, knees drawn up, and wait for sleep to drag him back to the same corridor, the same green light, the same woman's scream, the same man's laughter cut short. And then, without warning, another face would be added to the gallery. This is important. The repetition did not dull the impact, it refined it. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but in Harry's mind there were thousands. He smelled smoke from cottages and townhouses he had never visited, thick and oily, clinging to his throat. He tasted the metallic tang of fear as if he had bitten his tongue, as if someone else's terror had a flavor. He heard the weight of bodies hitting floors and frozen ground, each impact distinct. Each one teaching him that death had sound and texture, that it was not an abstract word but a series of very specific endings. All of it experienced in a cupboard that smelled of dust, damp wood, and cleaning products. The sour sting of bleach, the powdery ghost of washing detergent, the scratch of spider legs on his skin as he flinched from blows that never landed in that space, only in other people's last seconds. Magic had turned his scar into a doorway, and the door never fully shut. He learned to cope in ways no child should have to learn. He learned to bite his knuckles hard enough to leave crescents, to press his teeth into his own skin so the pain would anchor him to Privet Drive and not to a cellar where a wand was raised. He trained himself not to scream, because screams brought Dudley and Dudley brought fists. Instead, he memorized the pattern of freckles on a witch's nose, the way a wizard's hand shook as he tried to shield a stranger, the color of wallpaper, the tilt of a chair, the exact shade of the curse's light. If he could remember every detail, then the people were real. If they were real, then he was not mad. That was the plan. As much as an 8-year-old could have a plan at all. Canon remembers only the green light and his mother's voice. In that other story, the nightmares are fragments, intermittent and cruel, but mercifully brief. Here, the connection is stronger, older, less forgiving. Each time Voldemort or his followers killed, some echo crossed the fracture in Harry's scar. Not Dumbledore, who had praised the mystery of ancient magic, understood the day-by-day cost of that fracture. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban believing in a single night, not a decade of them. At school, the visions did not vanish, but they thinned. The noise of the cafeteria, the clatter of trays, the shriek of chair legs on linoleum wrapped around him like a crude human ward. Surrounded by children who argued over puddings and football stickers, he felt the dead recede to the edges of his awareness, as if even this thin, ordinary life could push back against the dark for an hour. He did not know that the true source of his torment waited in another world with stone corridors and moving staircases. He only knew that when the bell rang and the hall filled with living voices, the silence in his head was the closest thing to peace he had ever known. How long could that last? It did not last at all. Several miles away, and several years before Hagrid would ever knock on a hut door, Albus Dumbledore sat alone beneath the watchful silver instruments of his office and read a thin, trembling report from a squib in little Winging. This is important. The parchment was ordinary. The words were not. Night terrors, screaming in parcel tongue like hisses, strange names repeated with the flat certainty of memory: Marlene, Caradoc, Prewett, Greenlight, always Greenlight. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the war had found Harry Potter anyway. Dumbledore's hand tightened on the parchment until the edges curled. He had left the boy on a doorstep with a letter and a plan, believing blood magic and ordinary boredom would be a shield. Now he read Arabella Figg's careful description of an 8-year-old reciting, in halting detail, the exact pattern of wand movements used in an unforgivable curse. The boy described the way a body falls when the soul is torn free. He spoke of a woman with hair like a copper flame who stepped between death and a crib. He spoke as if he had been there, because in a way that defied every charm Dumbledore knew, he had. Protection had become witness. Safety had become surveillance. The child was not outside the war at all. He was its unwilling mirror. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated the Fidelius, who had watched the replica coffins sink into consecrated earth, had foreseen this. He had calculated risk upon risk, accepted the cruelty of exile, trusted that ignorance was a kind of mercy. Now, ignorance was impossible. Every time the scar burned, another death wrote itself into a mind that still struggled with multiplication tables. He needed to know the shape of this connection. Quietly, without prophecy halls or ministry eyes. So, one damp afternoon, he arranged to happen upon Mrs. Figg and her small, wary charge in a Surrey park that smelled of cut grass and petrol. He was twinkling and absent-minded for the Muggles. For Harry, he was a scalpel. "I once knew a witch named Marlene," he said lightly, as if chasing a memory. "Marlene, McKinnon," Harry whispered, before he could stop himself. His fingers dug into the swing's rusted chain. She died by the window. They broke the glass first so she would see them come. The boy's eyes were not the eyes of a child. They were a catalogue of endings. Dumbledore did not flinch. Internally, the calculus shattered and reformed. In canon, he would have waited. He would have withheld, delayed, trusted that a childhood without magic was a kindness. Now he faced a different equation: to weaponize this terrible sight early, to turn a boy into an instrument who could map Voldemort's killings in real time, or to try, somehow, to shield a mind that already stood among the graves. Could he ask Harry to report every vision? Could he bear not to? That night, in his office, he moved among the shelves like a penitent. Candles burned low around the cracked stone basin of the Pensieve. The prophecy orb in the Department of Mysteries spoke of a power the Dark Lord knows not, and once he had allowed himself to believe that power would be simple love, sharpened by choice. Now, as he extinguished each candle with a precise flick, watching darkness reclaim the room, Dumbledore whispered into the gloom that the power might have twisted. Not into a gentle shield, but into a corridor between murderer and child, lined with every death Voldemort would ever cause. "This is important," he said softly, to no one. "What have we made of you, Harry?" The last flame died. In the sudden black, with Fawkes stirring restlessly on his perch, the headmaster understood that the prophecy's promise had become something far more terrible than he had ever intended. And the war would have to be rewritten around a boy who already knew how it ended long before it truly began. Harry began with the smallest rebellion he could imagine. He went to the library. Not the grand, dust-heavy aisles of Hogwarts that he did not yet know existed, but the narrow primary school shelves that smelled of old paper and disinfectant. He waited until Dudley and his gang were bored of tormenting him and the teacher had forgotten he was there. Then he slipped into the quiet, clutching a scrap of paper where he had written the names that woke him in the dark. Marlene, Gideon, Fabian, a man called Caradoc whose face dissolved each time the green light hit him. Names that felt like a grave list carved into his bones. This is important, he told himself, though he did not yet know why. He moved from the battered encyclopedias to the local registers, to war memorial pamphlets, to anything that looked like it might hold the story of a death. Nothing. No Marlene with that surname. No Pruitt brothers lost in any Muggle war. No Caradoc Dearborn in the thin book of village casualties. The silence of the records was almost louder than the screams in his head. Part of him felt relief, as if their absence meant they might somehow be alive. Another part understood, in a wordless, cold way, that the truth was simply being kept elsewhere. He noticed other patterns. The dreams were never the same people, but the deaths were threaded together by the same details, like beads on a single invisible charm. The same color of light, a green that did not exist in the ordinary world. The same half-heard word, Avada, slipping between teeth twisted in hatred. And beneath it all, the same satisfaction that was not his. A slow, poisonous pleasure that slid into his thoughts like oil. Sometimes he woke with that satisfaction still on his tongue. That was when he began to test it. If this was magic, if this was a curse, there had to be rules. So he made a plan in the only way a child could. He tried staying awake as long as possible, blinking in the dark cupboard until his eyes burned, to see if exhaustion called the visions or held them back. Some nights, when the green light rose again, he tried to shout in the dream, to move, to push against the moment when the curse fell, as if he could knock the wand aside. Nothing changed. The deaths came anyway, fixed and merciless, as if he were watching replicas of a play already performed. But the more he pushed, the clearer another presence became. Someone else was in his head, someone who watched with him, but not in horror. A presence that delighted in the endings, that leaned forward eagerly at each final breath. When Harry woke, gasping in the dark, he felt not only grief but contamination, as if he had helped. Filthy, complicit, marked, he learned quickly that there was no one he could tell. Not Dumbledore, who had left him here. Not Hagrid, who had carried him once and then vanished into myth. Not Sirius, who had never come at all. The Dursleys would call him mad and lock the door. So he made another plan. He would never tell them anything again. If he was cursed, he would solve it alone. The mistrust settled early, like a stone in his chest, waiting for the day a giant would knock on the door and offer him a different kind of story, and a school full of adults he had already decided not to trust. The night it changes, the dream does not begin with screaming. It begins with quiet, with a small house breathing in the dark, the kind of silence that exists just after a storm and just before a grave is filled. This is important. Harry stands where he has never stood before. Not in a corridor, not in a battlefield, not inside someone else's collapsing chest. He stands in a doorway at the top of a narrow staircase, looking into a room he somehow knows and has never seen. There is a crib, there is a woman, there is a door between them. She has his eyes. Lily was a charms prodigy, but in this vision there is no wand in her hand, no intricate plan, no complex protection. Only her body, slight and shaking, placed like a living shield between the door and the crib. Her hair is loose, her voice is breaking. She is pleading with someone Harry cannot quite see, a tall absence framed in the doorway, a human-shaped void where a face should be. "Not Harry," she says, and the words cut through him because he hears them twice, once as a baby's name and once as his own. "Please, not Harry." The intruder raises a wand. The world contracts to one color, green. Not the soft green of his eyes, not the ordinary green of grass in the school fields he has not yet walked. A violent, absolute green that erases everything it touches. The charm leaves the wand like a verdict. The woman's body snaps backward, hits the floor with a sound that is horribly small, and lies still. Downstairs, another body is already cooling. Harry knows this now without seeing it, the way he has known every other death, the man who tried to hold the door, who fell where he stood, his wand still in his hand. James Potter is a corpse before the dream begins. But the grave was empty. The intruder steps over Lily's body. He turns the wand slowly, deliberately toward the crib, toward the baby, toward Harry. And here the vision fractures. Harry is in the crib too. He feels the bars against his tiny fists, tastes milk and salt and fear, hears his own thin wail. At the same time he is in the doorway, an unseen observer, watching his own face crumple. He is both the target and the witness. He cannot move in either place. "Potter," the intruder says, and for the first time in any loop, the name is clear, thick with hatred and something like disbelief. The wand hand trembles. Just once. How many times has Harry seen this curse fly, clean and unerring, at strangers whose names he never knew? Why does it shake now? The green light comes again. It hits the baby's forehead. It hits the scar that does not yet exist. Harry feels it enter, a cold pressure, then recoil as if the world itself refuses the magic. Something ancient screams, a sound with no lungs behind it, a tearing that feels like the sky breaking. Then silence, no breath, no heartbeat, no crying. And then he is on his back in the cupboard, awake, his own breath soaring in and out, his scar burning like a fresh brand. He killed them, he whispers into the dark, the words tasting wrong and right at once. Not a car, a man with a wand. The lie has shattered, the story is broken. But the vision is not done with him yet. He does not wake up. Not fully. The vision recedes, but it does not vanish. It lingers like smoke in the narrow space under the stairs, clinging to the thin mattress, to the spiderwebs in the corners, to the boy who is suddenly older than his years. Morning means Dudley pounding on the door. It means Petunia's voice, sharp as broken glass, ordering him into the garden. So he pulls weeds. He feels damp earth under his fingernails, the ache in his back as he straightens, the sun on his neck. And then, without warning, the garden is gone. A dark forest slams into his mind. Green light. A witch with hair like starlight falls backwards, eyes wide. The echo of a curse still humming in the air. He blinks and the dandelions return. His hands are shaking. The plate in his grasp will slip if he is not careful. This is important, because it happens again at the sink, hot water stinging his fingers as he scrubs Vernon's plates. Steam rises, the kitchen fades, a stone corridor appears, torches guttering. An Order member he has never met standing alone against 3 masked figures. They laugh as they raise their wands. He hears the last word that man ever says. It is a name. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated plans and counterplans from a high office, believing the boy under the stairs was merely hidden, merely waiting. Not Hagrid, who had carried Harry from the ruins once and then vanished from his life, convinced the worst was over. Not Sirius, who had rotted in a cell built on despair, never knowing his godson was already attending a nightly procession of the dead. They are all ignorant in their own sincere ways. Petunia's disgust is real. The way her lip curls when she looks at him has nothing to do with magic and everything to do with old, festering jealousy. Vernon's bluster is real. His rants about your lot are loud enough to rattle the cupboard door. Dudley's bullying is real. The fists, the taunts, the stolen food. None of them are replicas of cruelty. They are small, ordinary, and utterly unaware that while they argue about chores and report cards, Harry is silently standing at 100 graves. He begins to sort them. The brave ones who stand their ground, wands up even when they must know it is futile. The terrified ones who beg, whose last moments are spent pleading with a faceless mask. The ones who die shielding children, bodies bent over something smaller and shaking. Each death presses against him, and he cannot stop assigning meaning. Is courage staying? Is courage running? Which of these endings is closest to the story he has been told about his parents, and which is closest to the truth? Pattern interrupt. One night he sees a woman with red hair who is not Lily. For a heartbeat he thinks it is his mother. It is not. The grave was empty, but the world is full of other losses. On the worst nights he cannot sleep at all. On the better ones, he lies on his back and counts, not sheep drifting over a fence in some peaceful field he has never seen. Deaths 1, 2, 3, 4, each face a marker, each scream a tally. His cupboard becomes a private war memorial, built of shadows and breath and scar twinges, a place where every casualty is as vivid as his own parents' fall, and no one else on Privet Drive even knows it exists. He thinks at first that he is counting people, names, faces, a private roll call of the dead. He is wrong. What Harry is really counting is curses. Each tally in the darkness is not a life, but a spell, not a person, but the echo of a single perfect act of unmaking. This is important, because in this story, death is not only an ending, it is a signature. Avada Kedavra does not simply stop a heart, it tears. It rips a precise emerald-edged hole through the fabric that binds body to soul, a wound in the world that should close the instant the light leaves the eyes. Usually it does. The grave is filled, the magic thins, the echo fades, and nothing remains but absence. But the night at Godric's Hollow was not usual. The grave was empty. The cottage was half a ruin. The killing curse did something it was never designed to do. It rebounded. When that jet of green struck Lily's corporeal echo replica and then turned, when it collided with the sacrificial charm she had anchored and the Horcrux ritual Voldemort had prepared in secret, the curse did not merely fail, it fractured. Lily was a charms prodigy, and the ancient protection she wove around her son did more than turn death aside. In this darker line of reality, the rebound fused Harry's newborn magic to the lingering trace of every killing curse Voldemort had ever cast. Not Dumbledore, who had studied a lifetime of dark artifacts, had a name for this. There was no theory, no precedent, no plan. Ontologically, Harry is not seeing ghosts. There is no time travel, no parade of shades dragged from some spectral graveyard. What moves through him, night after night, is the imprint of the spell itself, the way death felt as it passed through Voldemort's wand and into another human being. He does not watch from a distance, he inhabits the instant. The flash, the silence, the falling. So when he relives his mother's stand in the nursery, or the last breath of the Pruitt brothers in a farmhouse thick with smoke, he is not visiting their memories. He is riding the current of Voldemort's magic as it once flowed, an unwilling passenger in the shape of their ending. The truth is colder than simple haunting, and the link is not finished with the past. Every time a scattered Death Eater, still loyal in some cellar or forest clearing, whispers the incantation and means it, that new curse vibrates along the same hidden channel. Harry wakes choking on air that is not privet drives, feeling the weight of a body that is not his, dying in places he has never been. Each new Avada Kedavra resonates, striking his scar like a bell. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins, knew why the boy sometimes woke with a scream years later. Not Sirius, who had sworn vengeance in the street, understood the deeper cost of that rebound. For now, neither Dumbledore nor Voldemort perceives it. The mechanism is an accident of collisions, ancient blood magic, Horcrux sorcery, a killing curse that hit twice. No prophecy spoke of it. No one anticipated that the boy who lived would also become the boy who bears every echo. Dumbledore does not sleep the night he first understands that Harry is not merely dreaming, but remembering. Remembering things he has never seen. Remembering deaths he was never present for. The castle is quiet. The hour when portraits snore and even ghosts grow thin. He walks with a lit wand down into the library, past shelves that had watched generations rise and fall, to the iron gate of the restricted section. This is important. The lock knows him, yields without protest, and Dumbledore moves like a man following an old unwelcome story back to its first line. He does not browse. He hunts. There is a particular grave of knowledge he once buried for himself, years ago, when he was a young professor hungry for every forbidden theory. His fingers trail along spines until they stop on a nearly disintegrating volume, its leather flaking like old scabs, lethal maledictions, and their metaphysical residue. He had read it once. He had closed it in disgust. He had sworn never to teach from it. Not Dumbledore, who had seen too many bodies, who had watched the killing curse fall in 2 wars, could bear to make this kind of speculation into curriculum. The book resists opening, as if the dried pages remember blood. He coaxes it with a charm, stabilizing it, then turns to the chapter he half-hoped did not exist. Thanatological echoes. The definition is cold, almost clinical. A thanatological echo is a magical afterimage of death, a residue left when lethal magic intersects with unstable souls or fractured anchors. Under extraordinary conditions, the text says that residue can imprint on a nearby living anchor, latching to unshaped magic the way frost clings to glass. The constraints are precise. Echoes fade quickly, often within hours. They require proximity so intimate that the living anchor might feel the last breath on their own skin. They are rarely conscious, at most a shiver, a nightmare, a moment of inexplicable dread. The author lists examples like curses whispered in a courtroom, a child who screamed each time his father's murderer killed again, a twin who woke with burns when her brother died by fire. But Harry is not a twin. Harry was a baby in a cot beneath a green flash and an older magic older than Hogwarts itself. Dumbledore reads the final, cramped note in the margin. If the anchor's magic is still forming at the moment of impact, the imprint may become systemic, a permanent lens through which later resonances are refracted. Harry is not a seer. The word tastes wrong now. He is something narrower and more terrible, a living archive of one killer's work. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the ledger of Voldemort's deaths did not vanish. It moved. It curled itself behind a lightning-shaped scar. Dumbledore closes his eyes. He sees Harry at 10, waking with someone else's last scream in his throat at 11. Walking into Hogwarts already carrying the truth of how the Pruitts died, how the Longbottoms were broken, how James and Lily fell. Alive, yet reliving their ending. The book offers no cure, only a final warning: if the originating will returns, the echoes will intensify. Dumbledore shuts the volume with care. The plan must change. The boy's suffering will become a barometer. If Voldemort rises, the first proof will not be in a headline or a dark mark over a house. It will be in Harry Potter's eyes. What then can he dare ask of a child who already watches everyone die? The answer, Dumbledore decides, is that he can ask almost nothing of Harry himself. So he turns instead to the adults who will orbit the boy long before he ever sets foot in a castle. The first circle is tiny, deliberate, closed like a grave. McGonagall is told on a rain-streaked evening in her office years before that famous letter flies. Dumbledore does not begin with prophecy or with the scar. He begins with the dreams. With an 8-year-old who wakes choking on smoke that no longer exists, who can describe the angle of James Potter's fall and the pattern of scorch marks on the Pruitt brothers' kitchen wall, though he has never seen a wand, never heard the word aura. This is important. By the time he finishes, her teacup is untouched and cold. She understands at once the binary that is being drawn. To the wizarding world, Harry is a symbol, a neat story, the boy who lived, an orphan with a famous scar and a conveniently simple role. But to the few who now know, he is something else entirely. A living crime scene, a walking archive of every unforgivable act tied to one man's magic. The grave was empty, the violence never was. McGonagall argues, of course she does, that a child should be told something, anything, that makes sense of the nightmares that leave him shaking in a cupboard, that explains why he knows the sound of Bellatrix Lestrange's laughter without knowing her name. She says that ignorance is not mercy, that confusion is its own cruelty. Dumbledore listens, hands folded, eyes on the middle distance. Then he answers with a different cruelty, to tell Harry that these are not just bad dreams but true deaths, that he is watching the last moments of people he has never met and cannot save, is to conscript him into a war he never chose before he has held a wand. Not Dumbledore, who had already allowed the world to build a legend on a toddler's survival, will add that burden if he can delay it. Secrecy becomes, in his mind, the lesser sin. Fear sharpens that resolve. If the Ministry learns that Harry's scar is not a mark but a window, they will not see a boy, they will see an instrument. A surveillance charm with a heartbeat. If the scattered Death Eaters learn, they will see a liability, a witness to every killing curse, and they will hunt him to silence the visions. Between exploitation and erasure, Dumbledore chooses concealment. Snape is brought in last. Years later, in a shuttered classroom that still smells faintly of potion smoke and old dust, Dumbledore lays out the bare facts with clinical precision. The link, the nightly deaths, the way the boy sometimes wakes with Lily's final word on his lips. Snape goes very still. The colour leaves his face with almost alchemical speed, because he understands at once what this means, that the child he has sworn to despise has watched Lily die 1,000 times, has heard the crack of that curse from inside her body. That every flinch, every look, every insolent word at Hogwarts will now be poisoned by a knowledge he cannot acknowledge and cannot escape. Dumbledore watches him struggle for breath in the quiet. Then he asks the only question that matters. Can you teach a boy you cannot bear to see, knowing that every time you look at him, he is watching her fall again? Snape does not answer Dumbledore's question. Not with words. His silence is its own confession, a raw, flayed thing in the air between them. Because now Dumbledore tells him the rest. That the boy did not only survive Lily's death, that he hears it, that he has heard it for years, that every time Voldemort's wand spat green light, every time a body fell without a mark into the dark, Harry's scar burned, and his mind opened, and he watched. This is important. Dumbledore does not soften it. He names the Pruitt brothers. He names Caradoc Dearborn. He names the Longbottom's torture, not a death, but close enough that the magic howled. Snape staggers as if struck. It is not dramatics. His hand goes to his throat as though the air has thickened, as though Lily's last plea has become smoke he cannot breathe. He had begged for her protection. He had gone to this same man, in this same office, and traded a prophecy and a life for a promise. Now he understands the shape of the bargain he actually made. Lily lives in the boy's eyes only as a reflection of her own murder. Her son has been condemned to a graveyard of borrowed endings. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the graves in Harry's mind are full. Snape sees it with a clarity that makes him nauseous. The thin, underfed child in oversized clothes, flinching at loud noises, is not just a neglected Muggle boy. He is an unwilling pensieve of the Dark Lord's victories. Every night the wand rises. Every night the bodies fall. Every night Lily dies again. So when Snape looks at Harry, the dissonance becomes unbearable. He sees James's face, the jawline, the hair, the posture that still makes his teeth clench. But in his mind, overlaid like a cruel charm, he hears Lily. Not laughing in the common room, not arguing about exams, begging, not Harry, please, not Harry. The more Harry frowns like James, the louder Lily's voice becomes. His cruelty in class hardens into a ritual of self-harm. If the boy hates him, if the boy fears him, then perhaps the boy will never come close enough for Snape to hear that plea echoed in real time. This is important. It changes the texture of his malice. He assigns detentions instead of taking house points when Harry looks particularly exhausted. He avoids demonstrating the killing curse theory lesson the year they cover Unforgivables, letting another professor take it. He will not speak the incantation in front of the child who has lived its echo. Pattern interrupt. He begins to fear jokes. A student mutters about dying of boredom. Snape's eye twitches, his wand hand tightens. He snaps a rebuke that feels disproportionate, because in his head he has just seen a woman fall in a flash of green. Late at night, when he stalks the corridors, he finds himself pausing outside the Gryffindor dormitory, counting breaths, listening, not for mischief, for nightmares, for the choked, hoarse cries of someone watching a story he never chose to read. He cannot enter their tower, but he can watch patterns. The boy who wakes at 1, at 3, at 4. The boy who comes to breakfast with the hollow-eyed look Snape remembers from aura reports. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated the plan. Not Hagrid, who had carried the infant from the ruin. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban, understands the precise arithmetic of this suffering the way Snape does. He added the numbers himself. So, when the time comes for occlumency, the lesson is not what the headmaster thinks. Dumbledore speaks of blocking Voldemort, of shielding secrets, of closing the scar-shaped door. Snape hears something else. He imagines a river, wide and black, pouring through an 11-year-old mind for a decade. Every death a stone that could have been spared if he had chosen differently. He will teach Harry to build a dam, not to keep the Dark Lord out, to keep the dead from drowning him. And somewhere in Cornwall, 2 people who are still alive will feel, without knowing why, that the water has shifted. The summer before Hogwarts does not dawn bright for Harry Potter. It crawls in, grey and heavy, like fog seeping under a door that will not quite shut. At first, the change is subtle. The deaths he sees in sleep begin, almost politely, to line up. No more single, isolated flashes of green and falling bodies. Now, on a Tuesday night in June, he watches a masked man die in a burning safe house. And before that flame has finished reflecting in the man's glassy eyes, the vision lurches, and he is inside a different room, a different year, another body dropping. The scenes are stitched together by something colder than the killing curse itself, a serpentine satisfaction that coils through each moment like smoke. He does not know the word Horcrux. He does not know that a fragment of Voldemort's soul is pressed like a brand into the scar on his forehead. He only knows that the same presence is always there at the edge of the dream, watching with him, pleased. This is important. The clustering comes with a cost. By the end of June, Harry's eyes have permanent shadows beneath them, bruised crescents that no amount of Dudley's cast-off food can fix. He startles at every slammed cupboard, every barked order, every crack of Petunia's frying pan on the hob. Vernon calls him jumpy. Petunia calls it attention-seeking. Dudley calls him a freak and throws the remote when Harry flinches before it hits the wall. Not Dumbledore, who had left him here with a letter and a plan, sees the way his hands shake when he carries plates to the table. Not Hagrid, who had ridden a flying motorbike through fire and falling masonry, hears the bitten-off whimpers when Harry forces himself to stay awake in the cupboard, counting spiders instead of corpses. By early July, the nature of the visions shifts again. Harry begins to feel something before he sleeps, a low, restless stirring under his scar, as if the mark itself is a grave and something buried there has started to move. The dreams that follow are not always deaths. Sometimes they are corridors, damp and echoing, or a sense of vast, old magic humming just out of sight. Sometimes it is only the feeling of being called, not by a voice, but by a destination. Hogwarts, he does not know the name, but the pull is there, growing stronger as his 11th birthday approaches, as if the castle's wards and a soul shard in his scar are turning toward each other like magnets. So he begins to watch the pattern. If the stirring is worse on days when Dudley has been particularly cruel, he notes it. If the worst clusters of death come after evenings when he has nearly fallen asleep at the table, he forces himself to blink harder, to sit straighter, to delay the inevitable. It is a child's attempt at control, a grim little charm of willpower against an enemy inside his own head. Lily was a charms prodigy, but her son, starved of instruction, invents his own magic, ritualized habits, breath held a certain way, fingernails pressed into his palms until they hurt. If he can predict the nights, perhaps he can survive them. If he can survive them, perhaps he will not break. And then the storm drives them to the shack on the rock. The sea roars. The wind claws at the broken windows. Dudley snores on the mouldy sofa while Vernon mutters about boats and freakish weather. Harry curls on the cold floor, counting the waves, willing himself to stay awake. The vision takes him anyway. A man in purple robes, a ridiculous turban wound high around his head, steps forward in a candle-lit room. His hand extends, hesitant, to another figure hidden in shadow. There is a whisper, too soft to make out, and then the turbaned man's fingers close around a paler hand. A hand that seems almost boneless, almost leech-like. Satisfaction floods Harry's mind, cold and possessive. He tries to see the face. The angle shifts, the candles gutter. For a heartbeat he thinks he glimpses slitted eyes. He wakes with a shout that the storm swallows. The shack shudders, his scar burns. On the other side of the door, someone is knocking. The grave was empty. The story is about to begin again. The door does not merely rattle. It reverberates through the shack like a blow to bone, timed perfectly with the echo of that last scream still clinging to Harry's mind. Green light, stone walls sweating with damp, a witch falling as if some invisible thread has been cut. He is still half in the corridor when the wood splinters. The door crashes inward, the storm howls. And there, framed in lightning and ruin, stands Rubeus Hagrid. In another story, this would be the moment of rescue, of wonder, of the boy on the brink of discovering that he is not ordinary at all. In this story, the grave was empty. The space where innocence should have been has already been filled with other people's deaths. Hagrid looms in the doorway, coat dripping, beard wild, eyes searching for a thin, frightened child. He finds a thin child, yes, but not the expression he expected. Harry's pupils are blown wide, his scar livid, his breathing shallow, as if he has run for miles while never leaving the lumpy mattress. Hagrid speaks first, because that is what the plan required. Greetings, apologies for the delay, a birthday wish, warm and clumsy. He produces the slightly squashed cake like an offering, like a charm against fear. This is important. Dumbledore had told him that tonight was about reassurance, about giving the boy something sweet before the story turned bitter. Harry does not reach for the cake. Is there a spell? He asks, voice hoarse from a scream the Dursleys never heard that kills people with green light. The words hang there, heavier than the storm. Hagrid freezes. Not Hagrid, who had carried Harry from the ruins of Godric's Hollow, who had seen the flash of that same light reflected in broken glass, who had sworn he would be the one to bring the boy back when the time came. He was prepared to explain broomsticks and Quidditch and the word muggle. He was not prepared to explain the killing curse to a child who speaks of it like weather. How'd you? What makes ask that? His voice cracks around the edges. Harry watches him, measuring. The corridor is still behind his eyes. The witch's name is still on his tongue. He tests the giant the only way he can. Potter, he says first, because he has seen that death more than any other. Pruitt, Bones, each name is a stone dropped into deep water. Hagrid's face reacts before his words do. A flinch at Potter, a shadow at Pruitt, a raw, unguarded grief at Bones's that he tries, too late, to hide. He knew them. Harry knew it then, with the same cold certainty with which he knew the feel of the curse on his skin. Hagrid sinks onto the sofa, the springs protesting under his weight. The cake sits between them like a strange, bright replica of a normal childhood. His hands shake. Who told Ye those names? Harry's answer is simple, and it is the worst possible one. I saw them die. The storm fills the silence. Somewhere far away, in a different house filled with maps and ward light, Lily was a charms prodigy, and she feels a monitoring charm spike in frantic alarm. Hagrid makes his decision slowly, like a man lowering himself into cold water. I'll have to write to Dumbledore, he mutters, more to the rain than to the boy. The timetable is broken, the script is ash. He'll need to know everything. Harry leans forward, because he has one more name, and he wants to see what Hagrid does when he says it. Hagrid does not write that night, because the letter from Dumbledore arrives first, and with it the key to a world Harry has already seen die. Diagon Alley is not gentle. It is a riot of colour and sound and impossible architecture, a street that seems to breathe. Owls wheel overhead in ragged spirals, their wings brushing chimney smoke. Cauldrons clatter in stacks taller than Hagrid, iron on iron, a metallic chorus. Robes flare, coins ring, the air tastes of dragon smoke and sugar and ink and old stone. Magic is not hidden here, it is loud. But for Harry, every bright shopfront has a shadow. Every laughing face is a question. How many of you will fall to green light? How many of these hands reaching for quills and ice cream and joke wands will someday clutch at a chest and find nothing there because the grave was empty? This is important. He walks as though through a battlefield that has not yet happened, vu for a future massacre. They whisper as he passes. They always did, in his dreams, right before the curse, the boy who lived. The words follow him like a judgment, not an honor. He hears them and feels, not embarrassment, but accusation. Lived while you did not. Lived because you did not. In the press of strangers, in the crush of hands reaching to touch his shoulder, he feels every name he has watched die pressing back. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated plans and protections that failed. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from a ruined house and now from a ruined childhood. Not Sirius, who had howled his grief into a night Harry only knows as a flash of borrowed memory. Ollivander's is narrower than he imagined. Quieter, the dust is thick, the boxes stacked like gravestones in a vertical graveyard. When the old man steps from the shadows and says his name, something in the room tightens. When his pale fingers rise, unerring, to the scar, the world tilts. For a heartbeat, Harry is not Harry. He is height and hunger and exquisite, cold focus. He is a wand raised, a curse spoken, the sweet, sharp thrill of unmaking. He staggers as the echo of Voldemort's satisfaction floods him, as if the killing curse has fired again through his own bones. The wand that chooses him warms his palm, but his hand is shaking. The replica of triumph in his nerves is worse than any nightmare. Later, in the leaky cauldron, the noise thins. There is a plaque on the far wall, half hidden behind a crooked painting, names from the First War, carved in brass gone dull. Harry drifts to it as Hagrid argues over vault keys. His fingers find Fabian. Gideon, Marlene, Dorcas, he knew their deaths before he knew their faces. Now he traces them like a roll call of ghosts, matching each letter to a scream he has heard in his sleep. He could stay there. Instead, he is swept on to flourish and blots. The books should be a wonder. They are in another story. Here he lingers on titles about curses, magical history, the theory of sacrificial protection. He searches for the word that might explain why his head is a graveyard and why he is still alive inside it. Lily was a charms prodigy. Someone wrote that once, perhaps somewhere in these pages, is the missing line that turns horror into a plan. He leaves Diagon Alley not drunk on magic, but sober with questions. And the next vision is waiting. The next vision is waiting. It comes with the whistle. Steam coils along the platform like something half alive, and Harry steps into it knowing more about death than anyone else on that train. This is important. Every shout, every owl's cry, every nervous laugh from a first year is layered over quieter sounds only he can hear. The echo of curses, the thud of falling bodies, the last sharp intake of breath before the world goes dark. When the red-haired boy asks to sit with him, the moment feels almost scripted. In another story, this would be simple. A sandwich, a shared sweet, a joke about being poor and famous. Here, Harry studies him with a strange, almost forensic intensity. Freckles, hand-me-down robes, ink on his fingers. He wonders, with a cold, clinical part of himself that should not exist in an 11-year-old, whether he will one day see this boy fall under green light. He tests the air between them the way he has learned to test his own nightmares. "Do you know anyone who died in the war?" Harry asks, as though it is an idle question. It is not idle, it is a probe. Ron stiffens, then shrugs in that helpless way of children who have grown up in the shadow of graves. "Uncles," he says, "Fabian and Gideon, and some friends of Mum and Dad. People who fought you-know-who. Names Harry has already watched die. Faces he has seen contorted in defiance and terror, bodies broken in rooms he has never walked through while awake. The Pruitt brothers holding a doorway against a storm of green. A man with Weasley red hair laughing once before he screams. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the world is full of graves Ron does not yet know he carries in his family name." Harry listens, cataloguing, matching voice to vision, surname to scream. He says nothing of how Fabian's last shield charm failed, or how Gideon's wand snapped in his hand. He only nods, quiet and intent, as though Ron is telling him a new story instead of repeating an old one Harry has already survived in someone else's skin. Hermione arrives like a counterspell. Brisk, efficient, her arms full of books, her words already marching ahead of her. She talks of spells and exams and the wonder of magic as though the world is opening. Harry lets her speak, lets the brightness of her certainty fill the compartment, then places his question like a stone in clear water. "Have you ever read about the killing curse?" he asks, "about whether anyone ever survived it. Besides me." The air changes. Ron goes quiet. Hermione falters, then rallies with textbook precision, reciting what she has read about unforgivable curses, about how Avada Kedavra leaves no mark, no wound, only a body that looks almost like a replica of sleep. She admits, finally, that the books say no one else has lived. Harry watches their faces more than he listens to their words. Fear in Ron quickly covered. Discomfort in Hermione quickly rationalized. He almost tells them then. About the visions. About waking in Privet Drive with someone else's blood in his ears. about seeing his parents die 100 times and knowing with a certainty that feels like prophecy that those deaths were only the beginning. He does not Dumbledore, who had left him on a doorstep without explanation. Not Hagrid, who had given him the word wizard but not the word for what he really is. Not Sirius, who had burned in green light years before Harry learned his name. None of them had earned that truth. Why should two strangers on a train? So he holds back. He watches. He listens. He files away every flinch, every question, every attempt to make sense of the word curse. Lily was a charms prodigy someone had written. Harry wonders whether the thing in his head is a charm gone wrong or a plan gone right. As the castle rises out of the dusk, black against a bruised sky, he turns to the window. Stone towers, lit windows, reflections of his own thin face and the two beside him. For the first time, he is entering a place where the dead he knows once lived, studied, laughed. The corridors ahead are not empty. They are crowded with unseen ghosts who are not ghosts, with futures that end in graves he has already walked. He presses his hand to his scar and thinks, with a clarity that feels like a vow, that Hogwarts is not just a school. It is a battlefield he has already seen, and tonight he is walking onto it pretending he has not. He walks toward the stool as if toward an execution he has already watched 100 times. The hall is roaring, bright, alive. Inside his skull, something is still falling. On the boats, as the castle rose and the first years gasped, he had not seen turrets or windows. He had seen a woman in Ravenclaw blue, high among shelves in a library he had never entered, her hand closing on a book with a darkened spine, her foot slipping. No scream, just the sickening rush of air and the crack of bone on stone echoing through his chest. Then cold water on his face as the lake wind hit him, and Ron asking if he was all right. He had lied. He was not all right. This is important. Now, when Professor McGonagall calls his name, the whispers become a tide. The boy who lived. The boy who has watched others die. His scar throbs once, twice, in a rhythm that is almost a knock. He climbs onto the stool already exhausted, vision edges blurred, as if the woman in blue is still falling just behind his eyes. The hat comes down. The world narrows to darkness and the faint, dry voice in his mind. But the first sound is not a word. It is a sharp, startled intake, as if the old magic woven into the brim has flinched. Well, it murmurs, and there is something like awe, something like alarm. This is crowded. It moves through his thoughts and finds not only bravery, not only the stubborn, reckless loyalty that would burn for others. It finds corridors lined with bodies that are not there, a grave for every name Voldemort has touched, memories pressed into Harry's mind like fingerprints in cooling wax. It brushes against the faint, coiled presence of something else, something snake-slick and patient wrapped around the scar, and the hat almost pulls away. Not Dumbledore, who had tested 100 minds, had ever placed a child like this beneath its brim. Not Hagrid, who had brought orphans and pure blood heirs alike, had ever lifted it from hair damp with someone else's last breath. These visions, the hat whispers, tasting the word as if it is not quite sufficient. Death echoes. A dangerous charm without a caster. You see what should be hidden. You carry what should be buried, it considers. Slytherin rises in its thoughts like a serpent from deep water. Cunning to navigate this burden, secrecy to sheath it, ambition to wield knowledge of graves as a weapon. Ravenclaw follows, cool and distant, a tower of detachment where death could be studied, catalogued, turned into story and theory rather than nightmare. You would survive there, it tells him. Perhaps even thrive. A mind like yours, saturated with endings, they would make use of it. Harry recoils. Because in some visions, when the killing curse leaves no mark and the bodies fall like replicas of a pattern repeated, he feels it, the cold satisfaction, the clinical completion. The tiny, horrifying part of him that understands the killer's relief when a plan concludes and the world is briefly, terribly quiet. He will not be that. Not Sirius, who had laughed in photographs, not his parents in the grave that was empty, would have wanted him to become the thing whose work he witnesses. He does not have the words for this, but he has instinct, raw and absolute. Not Slytherin, he thinks, and beneath it, more fiercely, not the monster, not the one who enjoys the fall. Ah, the hat breathes. Gryffindor, then? A refusal, a rebellion. Very well. It hesitates, brim pressing against his scar, as if listening to something only it can hear. You will not be able to hide this forever, it whispers, so softly he almost misses it. Not here, not with this many eyes. The shout of Gryffindor crashes over him as the hat lifts away, and Harry stumbles toward a table of red and gold, not knowing which will come for him first, friendship or exposure. The celebration at the Gryffindor table blurs. The cheers, the clapping, the pounding on his back. For Harry, the sorting is not an ending. It is a threshold into a building already heavy with graves. Defense against the dark arts is where it breaks first. Quirrell stands at the front, turban askew, hands trembling as he sketches the outline of the unforgivable curses without daring to name them. His stammer turns each word into a broken shard. And as he speaks of pain in theory, Harry scarsears, and a theory becomes execution. For a breathless instant, he is somewhere else, stone floor. The smell of burning flesh. Voldemort's voice shrieking in fury as the body he rides begins to cook from within. Quirrell's hands claw at his own face, skin blistering where Harry's touch sears him, lungs failing under a weight of parasitic magic that will not die with him. Harry hears the screaming, knows whose throat produces it. Then he is back in the classroom, quill snapped in his fist, ink bleeding like a spreading wound. This is important. He does not only see the dead, he sees the ones who will die. In History of Magic, the obscenity is quieter. Professor Binns drones through goblin rebellions and legislative reforms, dates sliding past like gravestones with the names scraped off. Harry stares at the chalk dust hanging in the air and thinks of another dust, bones collapsing under green light, children huddled behind ruined walls, the Longbottoms strapped to chairs while curses peel their minds apart. Binns speaks of casualties and strategic errors in the last war as if describing the weather. Harry has watched those errors bleed. The ghost's bloodless recital feels like a lie dressed as a lesson. A charm meant to keep the living from understanding the price already paid. Potions is worse in a different way. The dungeon is cool and damp, but the smells are not neutral. As Snape lists ingredients, jars glinting in the torchlight, Harry flinches. Powdered root he has scented in a curse that blackened a woman's veins from the inside. A viscous green extract that clung to the edges of a vision where a man's heart simply stopped. The reek of something metallic and sweet that he remembers from a cellar floor soaked in failed resistance. He does not know the names, but his body recognizes them. Snape's eyes catch every twitch, every swallowed breath. There is suspicion there, sharp as a blade. But beneath it, something older, heavier, like pity buried under years of self-hatred. Not Dumbledore, who had chosen the boy for a plan. Not Hagrid, who had brought him from the wreckage. Snape sees a child reacting to invisible corpses and cannot quite look away. Charms and transfiguration become lifelines. In Flitwick's classroom, feathers rise and fall, sunlight catching on drifting down, and for a few minutes, magic is not a weapon but a possibility. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry's bones that same precision stirs, delighted by the clean logic of movement and intent. In McGonagall's lessons, matchsticks become needles, beetles become buttons, and the transformation is gentle, reversible, almost kind. Here, magic reshapes without ending. Here, the only screams are of triumph when a spell finally works. Yet, the reprieve is thin. As he walks the corridors, stone under his fingers, Harry feels the castle crowded. Not with students laughing and shoving and alive, but with shadows. He has seen bodies fall in these passageways, watched curses ricochet off these walls in visions not yet earned by time. The story everyone else is living is only the surface. Beneath it, in every classroom, in every echoing hall, he walks beside invisible corpses and knows that Hogwarts is not merely a school. It is a battlefield that has not finished claiming its dead. Hogwarts is a battlefield that has not finished claiming its dead. This is important. Because the first time Harry finds the Mirror of Erist, he does not walk into a simple childhood longing. He walks into a grave that refuses to stay a grave. The room is cold, stones swallowing sound, his breath a thin cloud in the dark. The mirror looms like a tombstone dragged upright, its frame clawed with strange, watching figures. Harry steps before it, expecting only himself, small and thin and shivering. Instead, the glass blooms with light. His parents stand behind him. James's hand lifts in an easy, familiar wave. Lily's eyes shine with pride. They are alive, whole, smiling, and then the smile stutters. The magic in the mirror reaches for his deepest desire and finds it at once. Not fame, not power, only this impossible ordinary scene, a family unbroken. But his scar has been a doorway for years, and through that doorway the last moments of dozens have marched. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the death echo was not. It has lived in him, coiled and waiting. So the image trembles. James leans down, ruffling hair that is not there, and for a heartbeat the cottage walls flare into being around them. A door opens behind them that does not exist in this room. A shape like a man without a face enters. Green light flowers. Lily's smile becomes a scream that makes no sound. Her body jerks, falls, and then the mirror, fighting him, drags the vision backward, stitching over the horror with the earlier frame where no one has yet turned, where no one yet knows. Life, death, life again. Flicker, strobe. A charm of desire wrestling a boy whose inner world is a catalogue of endings. Harry understands faster than he should. Here, the story does not have to finish. Here, when the door in the cottage begins to open, he can refuse to let it open. He can press his palm to the glass and hold the moment on the edge, his parents forever mid-breath, mid-laugh, the curse forever uncast. In his sleep, the visions run on rails he cannot touch. Here, time itself feels soft, malleable, something he can trap, control. That is the seduction. Not comfort, not really. He returns night after night, eyes bruised, movements mechanical through the days, then fevered in the dark as he flees back to the only place where the dead do not finish dying. Not Dumbledore, who had spent a lifetime watching the young go first, fails to notice. He reads the exhaustion, the frantic edge, the way Harry's gaze keeps sliding toward distances no one else can see. When Dumbledore steps into the mirror room, he does not see a boy enchanted by a pretty illusion. He sees someone who has been living in a graveyard for years and has finally found a corner without screams. He speaks of the mirror's danger, of how it shows neither truth nor knowledge, only dreams. But for Harry, that is the truth, the only world in which his parents are not replicas of agony. The warning lands differently. To walk away is not to abandon fantasy, it is to walk back into the howling. And so the mirror of Erist becomes something far more perilous than in the canon story. It is not merely a trap for desire. It is the first place in Harry's life where the dead are almost peaceful, and the first test of whether he can bear to leave them there. The next temptation will not be so easily moved down a corridor. The next temptation arrives with a stench of blood and stone dust. When the troll comes, Harry does not think of Halloween or feasts or the way Ron had laughed at Hermione that afternoon. He thinks of the corridor outside the bathroom, already seeing it slick with something darker than water. The scream that has not yet happened is in his ears before Quirrell bursts into the Great Hall. Death is moving again inside the castle. He can feel it. This is important. He moves before he understands why, dragging Ron with a desperation that feels older than 11 years, insisting they cannot stay, cannot hide, cannot simply trust that teachers will fix it. Not Dumbledore, who had watched too many bodies lowered into the grave to ever move quite fast enough in Harry's visions. Not Hagrid, who had carried those bodies with shaking hands. The story in Harry's head is different. Every moment is already shadowed by the way it might end. So the troll is not just a monster, it is a rehearsal. A proof that the corridor in his mind can be altered, that a girl who should have died in a tiled room does not have to. When Hermione walks away from that bathroom alive, hair tangled and eyes furious, Harry's relief is almost worse than his terror. Because now he knows the pattern can break. And if it can break once, then every failure to break it becomes a choice. The three-headed dog is another choice. Other students hear a growl and see teeth. Harry hears the echo of a future silence, the way a corridor feels after screams have stopped. The trapdoor, the whispers about something hidden, the name Nicholas Flamel surfacing like a half-remembered charm in the library stacks, each detail slots into a familiar shape. A valuable object. A dark will reaching for it. A body on the floor when the reaching is done. He starts watching the staff table the way other children watch Quidditch. McGonagall's rigid control, Snape's coiled fury, Quirrell's hands. It is not the stutter that troubles him, nor the garlic, nor the nervous glances. It is what happens when Quirrell stands too near. A flicker at the edge of thought. A man on his knees in a chamber of firelight, fingers clawing at his own throat. A second presence peeling away from the back of his skull like a burned replica of a face. The grave was empty behind him, yet something older than graves was leaving. The vision is brief, involuntary, and it makes Harry flinch every time Quirrell passes. He cannot explain that. He cannot say, "I have seen that man die." So he says instead, quietly, that he does not trust the defense professor. that Quirrell feels wrong, that the danger in the school is not the man everyone suspects. Ron calls it paranoia. Hermione calls it insufficient evidence. They argue in whispers behind curtains, in the library, outside the common room fire, her logic grinding against his certainty until both of them are exhausted. Hermione demands reasons. Ron demands that Harry stop acting as though he knows more than grown wizards. Harry, who has watched grown wizards die in corridors and kitchens and cellars he has never visited, cannot give them the kind of reasons they want. He lies instead. He says it is his scar, that it hurts sometimes when Quirrell is near, that he has bad dreams when certain names are spoken. It is not entirely untrue. The scar is a doorway, and every time Voldemort's will brushes the world, something pushes through. Flame, green light. The sound of bodies hitting floors. Dumbledore listens to this with eyes that are already ancient, and in this world even more guarded. There is a new layer to his plan. He leaves the stone where it is, behind charms and creatures and puzzles, but he reweaves the wards around Harry's scar with a precision that would have impressed even Lily, who was a charms prodigy and would have recognized the signature of his work. Threads of detection, of containment, of warning. If Voldemort reaches again through that lightning-shaped wound, Dumbledore intends to know at once. He begins checking the boy more often. A hand on Harry's shoulder in the corridor, a question about dreams asked with seeming absent-mindedness, a flicker of magic brushed against the scar under the pretext of inspecting a Quidditch injury. Harry feels watched, but not in the way he feels watched when his visions come. This gaze is measuring. Calculating guilty, the stone itself becomes less a prize than a pressure point. Harry cannot look at the third-floor corridor without feeling that same terrible double vision. The present and the almost present. The dog asleep and the dog frantic. The trapdoor closed and the trapdoor open. Himself walking away and himself descending. He tries to stay away. He tries to be 11. He does his homework, plays chess with Ron, answers Hermione's sharp questions with as much patience as he can manage. But the school is full of murmurs about the stone now, about theft and immortality and power, and every rumor is another hand dragging his thoughts back to that door. How many deaths has he already watched without being able to move? How many more will he watch if he turns his face away now? One night, lying awake while Ron snores and the fire dies, Harry understands something that will mark him more deeply than any curse. The visions are not just punishment, they are warning. They are, in their own twisted way, a kind of permission. If he can see the end of a story before it is written, does he not owe the people inside it an attempt at revision? No prophecy has named him. No phoenix has sung his destiny. But the magic in his scar has shown him a path lined with graves, and he is so very tired of standing at the edge of them. Helpless, he decides, in that quiet, that if he can see a death, he must at least try to step between it and the person it is reaching for. Even if he does not understand the vision, even if he is wrong, even if the attempt kills him instead. This is important, because the next time the scar burns and the images come, he will not run from the future he sees in the stone's shadow. He will go to meet it. And something waiting beneath the school is already turning its face toward him, amused, hungry, and very, very curious. He walks downward into the dark as if into a memory he has not yet made. The air grows colder. The stone beneath his feet feels like the underside of a grave. The visions do not wait. They fall on him in fragments, Quirrell's hands blistering and blackening as if pressed to an invisible fire, a high, inhuman scream that shreds the air, the thick, oily smell of scorched flesh. No sequence. No explanation. Just impact. This is important, because every step is now taken against a backdrop of someone else's ending. When the floor vanishes and the devil's snare seizes them, Harry does not only feel the plant. He feels the echo of every strangled breath he has ever watched from behind his own eyes. The coils drag at his chest, and, for a heartbeat, they are an Auror's ruined throat, a Muggle child's crushed ribs, a nameless man falling with a rope around his neck in a cellar Voldemort once visited. The magic is different, but the terror tastes the same. Hermione's fire drives the plant back. Light, heat, air, yet even as he gasps, the smell that rises in his mind is wrong. Not damp greenery. Burnt skin. Quirrell's skin. His scar gives a small anticipatory throb, as if pleased to have found a matching note. In the room of keys, metal wings glitter like broken glass. Harry tilts his head back, and for an instant, the vaulted ceiling is Privet Drive's front window shattering outward under the force of a curse meant for someone else. Shards hanging in the air, frozen. Each one holding a face in its surface: Gideon Pruitt, Fabian Pruitt, Caradoc Dearborn. Faces he has never met and yet has watched die. The silver flock dives, and he flinches as though they will slice him into the same glittering fragments. He flies anyway. Because the plan, if it can be called that, is simple. Move forward, reach the thing that has been calling to his scar since Halloween. Find the point where the story breaks. The chessboard stops him. White and black stretch away like a war cemetery. Ron is speaking, explaining positions, building a strategy from rules he actually understands. Harry is only half listening, because when he blinks, the board is gone, and there is Ron instead, lying unnaturally still on cold stone, freckles stark against bloodless skin, eyes closed. No sound. No context. Just that image, heavy as a body. Is it a vision? Is it fear? He does not know. He only knows that in every true vision, the person on the floor never gets up. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow because Lily was a charms prodigy, because James and Lily are still alive somewhere, because replicas and lies have already rewritten one death. But here, in this chamber of carved stone and moving statues, Harry has no such assurance. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated a decade of hidden war. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins. Not Sirius, who had vanished into Azkaban's silence. None of them are here to tell him which images are fixed and which can be defied. Ron steps forward, offers himself. The move is made. The crash of the fallen knight rings like a closing door. By the time Harry reaches the final chamber, the visions are a low, constant roar at the edge of thought. Quirrell burning, Voldemort screaming. Nameless dead, falling and falling. He steps over the threshold with the terrible composure of a child who has studied too many endings and has never once seen his own face older than it is now. He does not expect to win. He only expects to join the pattern. And something in the dark ahead of him smiles. The dark smiles back at him. The chamber is still. The air is old. The stone smells faintly of dust and something scorched, as if the room remembers a fire that has not yet burned. This is important. Because the moment Harry sees Quirrell alone before the Mirror of Erised, the world does not stay in front of him. It splits. Sight doubles, then fractures. He sees the man as he is, trembling hands, nervous twitch, the absurd turban. and he sees the man as he will be, skin blistering under Harry's palms, flesh searing wherever boy's skin meets Professor's, eyes boiling with a terror that has no word. He hears Voldemort tear free in a shriek of ripping soul and fleeing smoke. The grave is empty, and yet a body falls at his feet. He has watched this death 100 times in his sleep. Now he watches it in advance. The vision slams through him with the brutal clarity of every other death that has ever touched Voldemort's magic. Order members, Muggles, the Longbottoms screaming, James falling, Lily's last breath. He knew this pattern, he knew this ending. But standing here, breathing the same cold air as the man who will burn on his hands, the line between witness and executioner dissolves. If he touches Quirrell, is he seeing a death or causing it? Quirrell steps closer, voice low and eager, and the Dark Lord behind his skull goes very, very still. Harry is not afraid in the way an 11-year-old should be. His shoulders are too steady, his eyes are wrong. When Quirrell hisses, "There is no good and evil, there is only power," Harry does not flinch. He whispers instead, almost to himself, "I've seen you die." The words land like a curse. Not Dumbledore, who had spent a lifetime measuring prophecy, had ever unnerved Voldemort with a single sentence the way this child does now. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins, had heard this tone in Harry's voice. Even the fragment of Tom Riddle feels it, the disquiet of prey that has somehow already watched its own death replayed from another's eyes. For a heartbeat, the future wavers. Harry's mind splits along the fault line of choice. If he pulls back, if he refuses the contact his vision demands, perhaps Quirrell lives. Perhaps the man staggers away, scarred but breathing, a replica of all those almost dead Harry has seen in his dreams. But then, Voldemort escapes stronger, with a body he can rebuild, with time to hunt again. How many more graves? How many more nights of borrowed last breaths? If he acts, if he places his hands where the vision tells him, he becomes the instrument of a death he has already endured. He stops being the boy who watched. He becomes the boy who kills. He thinks of every scream that has ever dragged him from sleep, of parents he believes are bones beneath stone, of friends he has not yet met, whose deaths he has already seen. Lily was a charms prodigy, but no charm has ever freed him from this knowledge. Harry steps forward. He chooses. He reaches up. His fingers close around Quirrell's face like a verdict. The burning begins exactly as it did in his dreams. And Harry holds on, deciding that one more death is a price he will pay to stop the hand behind all the others, even as the chamber fills with the sound of a soul trying and failing to flee its own story. He does not wake to white sheets and sunlight. He wakes to fire. Quirrell's face is in his hands again, skin sloughing like wax from a candle left too near the flame, the smell of burning flesh and old grave dirt wrapping around him as the man's eyes bulge and cloud. The chamber echoes with a sound Harry has heard in 100 variations and one unchanging key, the last unwilling note of a life being cut off by another's plan. Then the fire becomes brightness. The stone floor becomes linen. The echo becomes his own hoarse breathing. Harry jerks upright in the hospital wing, hand still curled as if around a skull that is no longer there. The vision settles into place inside him with the awful methodical precision he has come to recognize. Another death, catalogued, another angle of the same old story, slotted beside Lily on the cottage floor. The Pruitt brothers in a corridor painted with red, the Longbottoms convulsing under green light while Bellatrix laughed. This is important, because for the first time the dying man had been close enough to touch. Dumbledore is already there, of course, seated in the chair by his bed as if he has been carved from it, hands folded, blue eyes too bright in the morning light. Not Dumbledore, who had moved chess pieces and children with the same grave gentleness, who had watched Harry across a year of corridors and feasts and never once spoken the whole truth. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from a ruined house and from a forest, but could not carry this. "Professor," Harry says, his voice thin but steady, "is Quirrell dead?" There is a pause, a small one, a measured one. Then, "Yes, Harry, I am afraid he is." Relief hits first, clean, sharp, the knowledge that the man who let Voldemort ride his body like a charm-twisted replica is gone. That there will be no more children standing between him and the stone, no more quiet stammer concealing a second, watching face. Then something else moves under it, darker and more familiar. Satisfaction. He had held on. He had chosen to hold on. And in the moment Quirrell's skin burned under his fingers, Harry had felt a savage, answering rightness that did not belong in an 11-year-old chest. He knew that taste. He had swallowed it 100 times through another man's eyes. Self-defense, Dumbledore continues gently, as if he has heard the thought. You acted to save your own life and the lives of many others. It was necessary. Harry watches the sunlight on the bedrail, thin gold on white iron. Was that what Voldemort told himself the first time he raised his wand and did not lower it? Necessary for the plan. For the world he wanted to build from other people's endings. Will it stop now? Harry asks. The deaths? If he's gone again, will I see fewer? There is a longer silence this time. No, Dumbledore says at last. Fragments of him remain. In the world. In magic. It may be some time before such visions fade. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, and it is empty here. Hogwarts was never a refuge from the dead, it is a new archive. Quirrell's burning joins the others, another reel in the endless projection behind his eyes, while the greatest wizard of the age speaks in half-truths about cost and necessity. Harry lies back against the pillows, eyes open, listening to the quiet. Somewhere, a fragment stirs, and for the first time, he wonders what will happen when the visions show him a death he is not willing to prevent. Summer does not bring peace. It brings silence. And in that silence, the war becomes louder. Privet Drive receives him as it always has, with clipped instructions and narrowed eyes, with the implicit warning that the cupboard under the stairs is still there, still waiting, still a grave for unwanted things. Harry stands in the hall and feels a different dread now. Before Hogwarts, the darkness had held only his mother's scream and his father's fall. Now, Quirrell's burning joins them. A man dying with Voldemort's will pressed through his skin, replayed behind Harry's eyelids until the smell of smoke seems to cling to the Dursleys' beige wallpaper. The pattern should be familiar by now. Voldemort kills. Harry sees. The dead file passed in order, each vision a fixed replica of a moment that cannot change. This is important, because the first time it shifts, he notices. It begins as something small, a diary, black and unremarkable, tumbling in slow motion toward the green surface of a cauldron. No screaming, no flash of killing curse, no sense of finality. Just ink, a name half glimpsed, and a soft plash of it vanishing beneath a potion he does not recognize. Then a girl younger than him, crying in a tiled bathroom, her shoulders shaking with a grief that feels unmoored from the old war. Then eyes. Not Voldemort's red, but a giant snake's yellow-green, filling his vision so completely that he wakes with his hands at his throat, sure he has been seen. These are not memories of the First War. They do not sit in the same place as his parents' murder, or the Longbottom's torture, or the nameless bodies falling in alleys he has never walked. They feel nearer, as if the magic is no longer content to drag him backward through history, but is beginning to thread itself through the present, stitching him to events that have not yet finished happening. He lies in the too small bed in Dudley's second bedroom and understands, with the cold clarity of a child who has seen too much, that somewhere in the wizarding world something is moving. Now he tries, clumsily, to answer it. One afternoon when the Dursleys are out and the house is briefly his, he steals a pen and a sheet of thin muggle paper and writes to Dumbledore. He does not know the address, so he writes the name and the word Hogwarts and hopes magic will do the rest. He writes about the diary, about the girl, about the snake whose gaze feels like a promise. He writes that some deaths feel close. He does not write that he is afraid. The letter never makes it to the post. The pattern breaks with a crash in his bedroom, with a pair of enormous green eyes and a voice that speaks of danger at Hogwarts while smashing the only means Harry has to reach the one adult who might understand. Not Dumbledore, who had watched him in the hospital wing and chosen silence. Not Hagrid, who had put a coat around his shoulders and then vanished back into the forest of adult secrets. Not Sirius, who had once been planned for him and then erased from the story entirely. Dobby's chaos is well-meaning, frantic, and utterly destructive. The pillowcase-clad creature yanks the letters the Dursleys have hidden, topples the lamp, ruins the dinner downstairs, and in the confusion, Harry's careful page to Dumbledore is torn, crumpled, lost. The message dies before it can carry the warning. That night, locked in his room with bars on the window and cold soup congealing on the carpet, Harry lies on his back and watches the shadows of the bars crawl across the ceiling like prison stripes. The cupboard is gone, but the feeling is not. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but its echo lives here, in every small space he cannot escape. He whispers into the dark, because there is no one to hear him. He whispers apologies to the dead who come to him each night, and to the living he has not met yet, the girl in the bathroom, the victims behind the snake's eyes, the friends he fears he will fail when the train carries him back into the war that never ended. He promises them he will try. He does not promise he will succeed. Somewhere, far away, a diary waits to be opened. And the visions do not stop. The first time it happens, he thinks the castle has finally decided to kill him. A corridor, quiet, too quiet. A cat's stiff body hanging from a torch bracket. And before the word petrified can form in his mind, the world splits. Mrs. Norris is not stone. She is broken. Blood spreads across flagstones that are not yet there, as if the very bones of Hogwarts have become a grave. Something unseen strikes, ribs crack, lungs flood. He hears a wet, tearing scream that no cat could ever make, a sound that belongs to larger throats and older deaths. Then he blinks, and she is only frozen, eyes glassy, whiskers rigid, no blood at all. The grave was empty. The death he just watched has not happened. This is important. In that instant, Harry understands that his curse has found a new register. It is not only tied to Voldemort's wand or the echo of green light over a crib, it is listening for outcomes, for endings, for the future shape of pain pressed like a watermark into the present. He does not know if he saw what will be, or what might have been, or some twisted replica of both. Then the whispers begin. He hears them first, as every student does, faint, sibilant, sliding through stone. But for Harry, each word drags other sounds behind it. A hiss becomes a gasp, a scrape becomes a body falling. The language of serpents pulls up, like hooks through water, overlapping echoes of deaths that have nothing to do with this year's attacks and everything to do with the castle's long memory. A girl in ink-stained robes dying of snakebite in a forgotten dungeon. A boy crumpling under a curse during a duel that was never reported. A professor whose heart simply stopped at her desk, except Harry hears it stutter, protest, fail. The walls remember. The stones keep every scream. And his scar, too attuned to Voldemort's magic, translates that archive into nightly liturgy. So when he finds the diary, he clings to it not as a curiosity, but as evidence. Evidence that the story has a source. Tom Riddle's memories unfold with a polished calm that chills him. Harry watches the staged expulsion of Hagrid, the constructed narrative of noble prefect and monstrous boy, and beneath it he recognizes a familiar stillness. The same cold detachment he has felt riding behind Voldemort's eyes as curses fall. Not Dumbledore, who had misjudged Tom once, not Hagrid, who had paid for that misjudgment. Harry stands between them, seeing what neither saw in time, the absence of grief in the boy accusing, the clinical interest in how people break. He realizes, with a clarity that makes his hands shake, that the diary is not just a window into the past. It is a conduit, a plan. A living fragment of the same mind that has made him a witness to so many endings. And the chamber itself becomes a threat of a different order. Until now, every death he has watched has been displaced, across time, across distance, across the thin membrane of someone else's perspective. What happens if the monster gives him a death he cannot wake from, cannot escape, because he is standing in the room when it happens? What happens when the scream and the vision are the same sound? He walks corridors like a penitent in a temple of possible corpses, every shadow of prophecy waiting to solidify. He pictures Colin, Justin, Hermione, Ron, each face overlaid with the sudden slackness he has seen in so many strangers. He cannot bear the thought of adding Ginny Weasley to that ledger, because he understands something no one has told him. If she dies in that chamber, he will see it twice. Once, with his own eyes, as the basilisk strikes or the diary drains her. And once more, later, through the echo of Voldemort's magic that has never stopped using him as a mirror. A double horror, a duplicated grave, a replica death he refuses to allow. Harry does not yet know how to save her. But he knows he must break the pattern before it completes its circle. Somewhere beneath his feet, the pipes are already shifting. Somewhere beneath his feet, the pipes are already shifting. Somewhere above his head, a girl is already dying. And for the first time since he was old enough to name a nightmare, Harry walks toward a death he cannot see. In the chamber, the air is wet and cold, thick with a reptilian musk that clings to his throat. Stone serpents leer down. The grave is everywhere and nowhere at once. Harry waits for the familiar lurch, the invasive rush of someone else's ending, the way his magic usually claws open when Voldemort's history presses in. Nothing comes. This is important. The basilisk's death is not yet written into the scar, not yet woven into the killing curse's long ledger, and so there is no echo to warn him, no prelude of terror to haunt him in advance. When the basilisk erupts from the statue's mouth, when Fawkes blinds it and the sword falls into his hand like an answer, the absence of vision is almost louder than any scream. He is alone in his head. No flashes of other corridors, other victims. No murdered boy in a diary, no parents, no order members dragged beneath green light. Just his own heartbeat and the knowledge that if he fails, Ginny's body will not be a replica of any past loss. It will be new. It will be his. He runs, he climbs, he turns. The sword gleams with old goblin craft and with something older still, the human decision to end a life. When he drives the blade up into the basilisk's open mouth, it is not a reflex. It is a choice. He knows where to strike. He means to kill. The crunch of bone, the hot rain of blood, the shuddering collapse of that enormous body. This time, the death does not arrive as a vision imposed upon him by someone else's curse. It arrives through his own hands. And in the stunned silence that follows, as venom burns its way toward his heart, Harry understands with a kind of horrified clarity that this creature's final moment will never haunt his sleep. No killing curse touched it. No Horcrux drank it. The responsibility is his alone, unshared, unmediated by Voldemort's magic. Then the diary. The fang. Ink that behaves like blood and smoke and memory all at once. When Harry drives venom into the heart of Tom Riddle's teenage face, the backlash is immediate and brutal. Riddle's deaths, not the basilisks, flood him. A woman falling in Godric's Hollow, a man in the same doorway, muggles on a village street, the Longbottoms screaming under Cruciatus, nameless bodies in masks and without them, all lit by the same merciless green. Not Dumbledore, who had tried to catalogue these losses, not Hagrid, who had carried some of the bodies, not Sirius, who had rotted for crimes born of these murders. None of them feel it as Harry does now, all at once, compressed into a single collapsing heartbeat. Ginny is a pale weight beside him. For a moment, he cannot tell if her stillness is another memory or a new entry in the ledger. When she inhales a ragged, miraculous sound, the relief is almost violent. One life back, against so many he has already watched fall and could not touch. The tally does not balance, but it shifts. He understands that whenever he can stand between someone and a grave, he must. No hesitation. No plan that leaves him passive. Fawkes heals him. The chamber empties of Riddle's presence. Yet as Harry walks away, sword slick, robes stained, he knows the story has changed. He has killed a man in a turban. He has killed a monster in the dark. The line between witness and killer is thinning, blurring, tightening around his throat in ways that frighten him. What happens when the next vision shows a death he could cause instead of one he can only watch? The next vision does not show a corpse. It shows a door. It shows a man Harry has never met, laughing as he hands a motorbike helmet to James Potter and calls him Prongs as if the name were a prayer and a joke in one. Then the vision twists, the way all of them do, and Harry's scar becomes an open window for another mind. He sees Godric's Hollow again, but not as a child in a cot. He sees it as Voldemort saw it. The grave was empty from this angle. There is only the cottage, only the hunt, only the certainty of victory. A name forms on a serpent's tongue before the killing curse is raised, a name soaked in contempt and satisfaction. Sirius Black. This is important. Newspapers on Privet Drive will later call Black a murderer and a madman. But Harry's hatred begins here, inside this stolen point of view. Night after night, the replay deepens. His mother's scream, his father's fall, the green light that should have ended everything. Now each image is edged with a single conviction: their friend gave them away. Not Dumbledore, who had spoken of sacrifice and protection. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins with rough, shaking hands. Sirius, who had laughed at the door. By the time the Hogwarts Express pulls out for his third year, Harry is no longer merely the boy who watches deaths. He is the boy who watches a betrayal he never saw, over and over, until the line between memory and implant blurs. The train slows. The lights fail. Cold pours in like water, filling a grave. The Dementor steps through the carriage door, and the world answers. Every death he has ever witnessed rises at once, a library of endings ripped from their shelves and hurled at him. The Pruitts on a burning street. The Longbottoms on the floor of their own sitting room, tortured beyond reason. His mother in the nursery. Quidditch becomes another battlefield. Every time the Dementors draw near, the sky fills with screaming replicas of the dead, each vision more vivid than the last. Magic meant to guard Azkaban now drags Azkaban into him. Remus Lupin intervenes with chocolate and quiet authority, but his real work begins later, in the empty classroom that smells of dust and old chalk. The Patronus charm is presented as advanced defensive magic. It becomes something else, a crude therapy, a discipline of anchoring. Lupin asks Harry for memories that are not graves. First broom ride. First real friend. The moment he knew he was a wizard and not a freak. Harry learns to seize these living fragments and hold them like talismans against the flood. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Cornwall she feels the strange resonance as her son bends light and hope into a silver shield. When he finally stands before Sirius Black in the Shrieking Shack, he will not bring only a wand and a name. He will bring an archive of supposed crimes playing behind his eyes, and the terrible question: what if the man in front of him is the monster he has already watched 100 times from inside the monster's own mind? When Sirius and Lupin corner Peter in the Shrieking Shack, Harry is not simply a boy discovering a new story about his parents. He is an archivist of endings. Every step they take toward Pettigrew presses against a catalogue of dying breaths that only he remembers. The wandlight is harsh, unforgiving. It throws Peter's face into a grotesque mask of terror, and Harry's mind fractures into echoes. A woman in St. Mungo's, eyes wide as green light strikes. A red-haired man in a narrow lane trying to raise a wand that is already too slow. The Longbottoms, not dying but wishing they had, as Cruciatus tears through them again and again. He has seen this fear before. He has heard this pleading. It is the same script written in different bodies. This is important. Because in that moment, Harry understands that he is not watching a unique act of justice. He is watching the prelude to another death that will join the graveyard in his head. Sirius is shaking with rage, Lupin with a colder, older grief. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban without trial, who has built this moment in his mind as the only sane conclusion to 12 years of torment. Not Lupin, who has outlived every friend except the traitor, who has rehearsed this confrontation in lonely classrooms and moonlit forests. They deserve an ending, they think, an ending written in green. Harry knows what that ending looks like from the inside. His scar throbs, not with Voldemort's presence, but with the ghost of every vision. James falling, Lily standing between crib and wand, the Pruitt brothers in a ruined safe house. Each time, the killing curse is clean, almost elegant, a charm that leaves no blood and no visible wound, only silence. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow because his parents had made a different plan, but the magic that tried to fill it still lives in him. He steps between them and Peter, voice cracking but absolute. He is not pleading for Pettigrew's life out of some naive belief that everyone can be redeemed. He is refusing to add another corpse to the invisible ledger that has been carved into his nerves since childhood. He will not watch his father's best friends become murderers in front of him. Not when he has seen, again and again, what killing does to a soul. He cannot say all of this aloud, so he says what he can, that they cannot kill Peter, that they must turn him over, that his father would not have wanted this. Beneath the words lies the unspoken truth. If Sirius and Lupin cross this line, Harry will see it every night for the rest of his life. The tragic irony coils quietly around the scene. By choosing mercy, Harry preserves the man who will escape, who will carry news to Voldemort, who will help orchestrate a graveyard in Little Hangleton where Cedric Diggory falls with no time to understand why. Harry will stand there too, watching another boy die because Peter lived here. Later, he will replay this night and wonder, did he save a friend or doom a stranger? Did he break the cycle or bend it into a sharper hook? For now, as they leave the shack, he believes he has done it. He believes he has finally interrupted the pattern, that this is the night when no one dies. He does not yet know that the time turner in Hermione's pocket will force him to walk back into his own footsteps, to watch the same hours unfold twice, to learn that even a night without a body can still be haunted. He walks back into the night he has already survived. This is important. The air on the Hogwarts grounds feels thinner the second time, as if the magic itself remembers what is about to happen and is bracing for impact. Harry and Hermione move like replicas of themselves, pale shadows slipping along the castle wall, unseen by Hagrid carrying the stretcher, unseen by Dumbledore's sweeping cloak. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated so many layers of this night, who had a plan for time turners and term schedules and ministry permissions, but no plan for the boy who has watched people die since childhood. The grave of these hours is not in a cemetery. It is in Harry's memory, dug and redrawn every time he sees a death that is not yet his. He knew this path. The Whomping Willow, the run to the lake, the screaming, yet walking it again, with Hermione's hourglass ticking faintly against her chest, he feels the same dislocation as in his visions, present and absent, alive and already mourning. He is now watching events he has already lived, the way he has watched deaths he never experienced, condemned to be both witness and survivor. By the lake, the pattern tightens. He sees himself across the water, small and staggering beneath Sirius's collapsing weight, Dementors closing like a moving grave. He waits for the miracle he remembers, the blinding stag that drove the darkness back. He waits for his father, for James, for the man in every photograph, laughing and alive. No one comes. The realization is not sudden, it is a slow, merciless aligning of truths. The stag had not been his father's ghost, it had been him. The rescue he had spent 13 years secretly believing in, the parental hand reaching through time, had never existed. The grave was empty. The story he told himself as a child, someone will come, someone must come, collapses under the weight of what his eyes now show him. And in that collapse, his visions rearrange themselves. Just as no one came to save the Pruitts as they fell, or the Longbottoms as they screamed, or the nameless Muggle-borns whose last breaths he has relived, no one is coming to save him and Sirius now. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins. Not Sirius, who had broken out of Azkaban and shattered the old plan simply by surviving. There will be no external hand to pull this knight away from the brink. Either he acts, or he watches another death added to his private archive. When he steps from the trees and raises his wand, the gesture is more than spellwork. The Patronus is an act of defiance against the Dementors, yes, but also against the passivity that has defined his entire relationship with death. For once, he does not merely receive a vision. He interrupts it. He stands between Sirius and the kiss, between his own future corpse and the waiting dark, and pours all his knowledge of loss into a single, impossible charm. The stag explodes from his wand, brilliant, undeniable, a living contradiction of everything the Dementors feed upon. Lily was a charms prodigy, but this is magic even she did not design. A boy who has seen too many endings insisting on a different one, if only for a moment. Sirius lives. The kiss is averted. Yet as the stag circles the lake, as the Dementors scatter, Harry feels the bitter edge beneath the triumph. He has saved one man from this grave, but not from the future his visions have not yet shown. Azkaban's escape is only the beginning. There are deaths approaching that even he has not watched. And somewhere, far from the lake, there are two people who know that this is the first time their son has ever managed to pull someone back from the brink, and that he cannot do it for everyone. What happens when the archive of death starts adding names he loves? The goblet spits blue-white fire. A name falls. The hall exhales. Harry does not hear his own name. He hears a thud. Bone on earth. A body hitting the ground in a graveyard he has never seen and has watched 100 times. The vision is not like the archive that has stalked him since childhood. It is not finished. It is not fixed. It stutters. A cup spinning through the air, catching sickly green light. Rows of tilted stones, their carved dates blurring as though the magic itself refuses to show him which grave is his. A boy falling, back arching, arms flung wide, his face a smear of grey and terror that will not resolve into features. Then the great hall roars, and the graveyard is gone, and Harry is standing, and every eye is on him. This is important, because for the first time, the story in his head is not a memory of a death already written. It is a rehearsal, a draft. From that night, the tournament is no longer a competition. It is a countdown. The Hungarian Horntail is not merely a dragon. It is a proof of concept, a demonstration that the world is willing to place a 14-year-old boy in front of fire and teeth for the sake of spectacle. As he faces her, the flash comes again. Stone, cup, falling boy, and the dragon's roar blends with another sound he cannot yet name. Voldemort's high, cold laughter over an open grave. Under the lake, the merpeople and their spears become background figures in a different tableau. The bodies tethered in the water look, for a moment, like replicas on display, as if someone has laid out hostages in neat rows, the way the dead arrange themselves in his mind. Cedric's sleeping face drifts closest. Harry hesitates. If he cuts him free, is he pulling him toward life or toward the graveyard the visions promise? He saves them anyway. He always does. The guilt is quieter than the imperative to keep anyone, alive for one more hour. Between tasks, he goes to Dumbledore. Not once. Repeatedly, he describes the shifts, how the archive of past killings has begun to thin. How something new presses in at the edges, not completed, not settled, vibrating with imminence. Dumbledore listens, fingers steepled, eyes distant. Not Dumbledore, who had built his entire plan on the boy's survival, will say the one thing Harry needs: "You are seeing forward now." Instead, there are evasions, half answers about stress and trauma, and the mind's attempt to make patterns from fear. The truth is left unsaid. The grave was empty, and so Dumbledore does not yet know which death this is. Cedric becomes the problem Harry cannot solve. Every time they share a hint, every time they stand side by side over golden eggs on cold lawns at the edge of the maze, Harry feels as though he is physically steering the Hufflepuff boy toward an unseen headstone. Yet to sabotage him would be to choose a different death, a different innocent, and he cannot. The maze closes around them. Hedges like walls of blackened bone, the air tastes of old curses. When Harry's hand closes on the Triwizard Cup beside Cedric's, the world tilts. Recognition hits first, before the hook of the portkey, before the spin. The metal is cold and horribly familiar. This is the cup from his unfinished vision. This is the motion, this is the angle of his wrist, this is the moment he has watched without understanding. He knows, as the maze tears away and the graveyard rushes up to meet them, that he has finally stepped into a death that was waiting for him to arrive. He hits the ground already knowing where he is. The air smells of damp stone and old yew. The curve of the hill, the tilt of the iron fence, the way the moonlight pools on broken angels and leaning crosses. This is important. He has walked this graveyard 100 times in sleep. The grave was empty in his dreams, not of bones, but of meaning. A place without context, only angles and flashes, that obelisk near his left shoulder, that cracked cherub to his right, the Potter crest half seen on a distant, weathered slab. Now, as the portkey's spin dies and the maze rips away, every fragment slots into place with horrifying precision. The grave is not just a grave, it is a stage that has been waiting for its actors to arrive. He knows where the statue is before he turns. He knows where the cauldron squats, black and obscene among the tombstones. He knows where the name riddle is carved in stern capital letters, because his visions have traced those letters with his borrowed gaze. Harry is not surprised. That is the worst part. The world has finally caught up to the story that has been running in his blood for years. Kill the spare. He has heard that command before, echoing faintly at the edge of other deaths, a line of cold impatience that never quite resolved. Now it does. Green light, so bright it erases the night. The crack of Cedric's body hitting the earth, heavy and final. The silence that follows, the way the graveyard seems to inhale and hold its breath. Every detail matches the vision that has haunted the back of his mind, down to the angle of Cedric's outflung hand, the way his eyes do not close. But this time, Harry is in the frame. He is not a distant, unwilling witness drifting behind another man's wand. He is kneeling in the dirt, the smell of scorched grass and grave mold in his lungs, his own heartbeat roaring in his ears. He knew this death. He still failed to move the story. Then the ritual begins, and the graveyard becomes a crucible. Bone, flesh, blood, old magic, older than Hogwarts, older than the Potter's careful plan. The cauldron flares, and with it the link in Harry's scar. It is not the thin, distant thread he has known since childhood. Those nights when another killing curse would drag his mind into someone else's last second. It is a white-hot column, a spear of connection driving through him as Voldemort's soul stitches itself back into a body. He feels it. The recknitting, the obscene mending of something that should have stayed broken. The Dark Lord is not just alive, he is newly coherent, every shard of himself aligning. In that alignment, Harry senses a promise. More visions, more deaths. No longer echoes of a finished war, but dispatches from a campaign beginning again. He understands, kneeling there, that the deaths he has carried were only a prologue. The Prowetts, the McKinnons, the Longbottom screams under Cruciatus, his parents falling in Godric's Hollow like replicas rehearsing a scene. All of it was the first act. What comes now will be worse, because he will not only see it, he will be expected to answer it. Not Dumbledore, who had spoken of prophecy and choice, not Hagrid, who had given him a birthday cake and a name for his scar, not Sirius, who had promised him a home. None of them prepared him for this, to be both target and witness, sword and scrying glass, condemned to watch each life as it breaks. When the ropes fall and the duel is forced upon him, when Priori Incantatem drags the dead from Voldemort's wand, Harry recognizes every face before it forms. He has already watched each of them die. Now they stand beside him, confirming what he has always known: the line between vision and reality was never a line at all, only a delay. Later, when he seizes Cedric's body and the portkey and tears himself out of that graveyard, the triumph in the stands cannot touch him. He is clutching proof. Proof that foreknowledge is not salvation. Proof that he can see the green light coming and still fail to move a single soul out of its path. He had thought the worst torment was to watch. Now he understands a deeper cruelty: to watch, to know, and to fail. This is the failure that will haunt him more ruthlessly than any nightmare. Because it is not a vision. It is a weight. It is a boy's body in his arms, and somewhere, in a cottage that should have been their grave, James and Lily Potter feel the surge of Voldemort's return through their own hidden wards, and know that the war they tried to finish in secret has finally stepped into the open, dragging their son with it. Grimmauld Place is not a home. It is a mausoleum that never bothered with a grave. The walls whisper of old wars and older hatreds, and Harry listens to order meetings through keyholes and half-open doors, hearing men and women speak of casualties as numbers, of patterns, of strategy. They talk about the First War like a story that has ended. He has watched it every night. He has carried the Prewetts' last stand in his lungs like smoke, felt Marlene McKinnon's ribs break under a curse that shattered the air, tasted the metal tang of Gideon's blood. This is important, because when Moody mutters about acceptable losses, Harry is the only one in the house who has already buried those losses in his sleep. Not Dumbledore, who had stood at too many bedsides and yet does not wake choking on other people's final breaths. Not Hagrid, who had carried a baby from a ruined cottage and never seen, as Harry has, the way the killing curse hollows a body before it hits the floor. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban but never watched, again and again, the moment his younger self failed to stop Peter's escape. The grave was empty for all of them. For Harry, it is always full. When Voldemort returns to a body, the link in Harry's scar changes. It is no longer a leak, it is a channel. And once Voldemort understands that the boy sees, he begins to choose what the boy will see. Not just his own perspective, not just the cold, elevated angle of a snake sliding past victims. Curated deaths, selected memories, a mother begging for her child, an aura dying with a half-formed shield charm on his lips, a nameless muggle whose only crime is being in the wrong street at the wrong time. The plan is simple. Drown the boy in graves until he cannot move without stepping on a corpse. Break his will, not with pain, but with responsibility. Occlumency with Snape becomes a sanctioned cruelty. Short, sharp, violent Snape spells rip into Harry's mind and pull out images both already known and newly poisoned, and there is a second, quieter battle beneath the shouting. They both know what Harry sees at night. They both know which deaths belong to the First War, to Snape's own betrayal, and which are new offerings pushed through the scar like barbed wire. But they cannot name them. To do so would be to admit how deep the connection runs, how exposed Harry is, how complicit Snape feels. So Snape calls him weak instead. And Harry, who has watched Snape kneel in front of Voldemort in half a dozen visions, says nothing. At Hogwarts, his isolation hardens. Once he told Ron and Hermione fragments, a corridor, a flash of green, a scream. Now he tells them almost nothing. How do you explain that your mind is a battlefield paved with replicas of the dead? That every laugh in the common room sounds thin against the memory of bones breaking? He becomes careful with his words, then with his silences, then with his eyes. He looks away when they ask if he is all right. The cruelest twist comes in June. The Department of Mysteries. A vision of Sirius, tortured, pleading, framed by shelves of spinning glass. It feels like every other death Harry has seen, and that is the trap. Voldemort takes the boy's greatest fear, causing a death by trying to prevent one, and turns it into a lure. The echo is false, or bent just enough that Harry cannot tell where memory ends and manipulation begins. He goes. Of course he goes. How could he not, when the one man who understands Azkaban's shadows appears in his mind, broken and about to die? And as the black door of the department swings shut behind him, as the prophecy hall breathes cold around him, a new question begins to take shape, dark and inexorable. If Voldemort can forge one death, what else in Harry's graveyard of visions has never been true? He runs. He calls. He searches. The Hall of Prophecy stretches out like a stone graveyard of futures, and Harry is not looking for an orb. He is hunting a contradiction. If he can find Sirius alive in this place built for endings, then perhaps the vision of his godfather's broken body was only a lie, a counterfeit death in a mind already crowded with replicas of the real. This is important. For once, he is not trying to endure a death, he is trying to outrun it. Every aisle is a memory of failure. Cedric on cold grass. Bones breaking in Azkaban. The Longbottom screams. Each time, the pattern had been the same. Vision first, horror second, guilt forever. Tonight he means to reverse the order. Action first, rescue second. No grave at all. When he finds the archway room, it feels wrong in a way that has nothing to do with Voldemort. The veil breathes. The whispering magic brushes his scar and finds nothing to echo. No familiar imprint of a life Voldemort has already taken. There is no vision here waiting to be fulfilled, no rehearsed scream. It is a blank page in a book he thought already written. Then the duel erupts. Sirius laughing in the face of curses, spells colliding in sheets of light, Bellatrix dancing along the edge of murder as if it is a game she has already won. Harry's mind, so often split between present and prophecy, does something strange. It stays. No flash forward, no sudden overlay of Sirius's corpse, no glimpse of a body on a stone floor. Only the now, Sirius moving, shouting, alive, the red jet hits. The arc of his godfather's body is almost graceful. It does not match anything Harry has ever seen in his sleep. No corridor, no cell, no battlefield. Just a man tipping backward through drifting curtains, swallowed by a silence older than any curse Voldemort ever cast. And then, nothing. No impact in his mind. No echoing scream to replay until it frays. The veil's magic takes more than flesh, it devours the very imprint that should have burned itself into Harry's skull. Where every other death has left a scar-like groove of memory, this leaves only absence, a hollow where agony should be. The grave was empty. He waits for the delayed vision, for the retroactive flash that will prove this too. Belongs to the terrible collection Voldemort has been forcing on him since childhood. It never comes. In that void, a different story surfaces. He came because of a vision. Because Voldemort reached into the one part of Harry's magic no one truly understood and painted Sirius's death where Harry could not bear to see it. His attempt to prevent that image, to defy the plan of yet another grave, has led him here, to the loss of the only adult who treated him as a person, not a prophecy. Not Dumbledore, who had weighed him like a chess piece. Not Hagrid, who had delivered letters and secrets but never strategies. Not Sirius, who had wanted to give him a home rather than a mission. The realization settles with a colder weight than grief. If his visions can be forged, if the one death he did not see is the one that breaks him, then the old obedience must die. He will not trust the images in his mind simply because they hurt. He will not trust the adults who interpret them, no matter how wise they claim to be. Lily was a charms prodigy, and even she had misjudged which protections would hold. From this point, Harry decides the plan changes. He will choose which deaths he is willing to risk, which graves he is willing to accept, and whose voice he will follow when the next vision comes whispering out of the dark. And somewhere, beyond stone and curtain, something begins to listen back. The plan changes, and sixth year begins with a new subject. Not defense, not potions. Death, Dumbledore calls them lessons, but they are something closer to vigils. Harry steps into the gaunt shack and feels at once the overlay of another night, another ruin, another grave that was not a grave at all. The air smells of rot and old magic, but under it he can taste the echo of every scream he has already carried, every vision that burned itself into him before he even knew what Hogwarts was. This is important. Because Dumbledore thinks he is showing Harry a story from the past, a sequence of memories that will explain Tom Riddle. Harry is instead watching a commentary track on deaths he has already witnessed from the inside. In the shack, when Morphin lies slack-eyed on the floor, Harry recognizes the vacancy. He has seen that same emptied look in victims Voldemort used as practice, as rehearsal, as replicas of the murder that failed in Godric's Hollow. He knows with a cold certainty that this is not just cruelty. It is calibration. A plan being refined corpse by corpse. At the orphanage, when young Tom smiles with that precise, bloodless politeness, Harry feels the echo of other smiles that came just before the killing curse flared green. He can map the distance between charm and slaughter. Not Dumbledore, who had watched this boy from the outside, who had seen a troubled child and a dangerous man, but never the unbroken chain of deaths connecting one to the other. When the word Horcrux finally leaves Dumbledore's mouth, something locks into place. All those visions of killings that felt strangely weighted, strangely resonant, rearranged themselves. Some of those deaths were not merely murders, they were anchors. Sacrifices of unwilling lives to more fragments of a soul that refused the grave. Harry says as much, quietly, that certain killings felt thicker, as if the magic clung. Dumbledore studies him with a sudden, sharpened grief. He had not expected Harry to have a taxonomy of death already, to distinguish between an ordinary curse and the kind that drags a piece of the caster with it. In the Pensieve, as they watch Tom charm Hepzibah Smith, Harry names the precise second the decision to kill is made, long before Dumbledore speaks. He predicts the cup, the locket, the way the room will look when the body falls. Not Sirius, who had taught him recklessness, not Hagrid, who had given him warmth, only death had trained him this well. Then the cave. The lake is his mind made literal, an ocean of blackness, and beneath it the dead. They are not replicas. They are not illusions. They are every body he has ever seen fall, translated into grasping hands. The boat takes only the living, but he feels, as it scrapes forward, how thin that distinction has become for him. Is he alive, or merely the vessel for all these endings? The basin demands suffering. Dumbledore drinks, and Harry watches a man he loves relive helplessness, begging him to stop. It mirrors every night Harry spent as a child, pinned beneath visions he could not interrupt. Now he pours the potion anyway, because the plan requires it, because the path to Voldemort's final grave is paved with calculated agony. When they return to Hogwarts, the castle has not changed. Harry has. He is no longer just the boy who watched. He is beginning to think like a general standing over a map of possible funerals, deciding which dots of light must go dark so that others can stay alive. And the next time a vision comes, he will not only endure it, he will measure it, weigh it, and quietly decide how many more like it he is willing to allow. He has trained himself to think like a general, to stand above the map of graves and choose. But on the astronomy tower, there is no map, no distance, no time to think. The moment the body-bind curse hits him, Harry understands that this paralysis is different. His limbs lock, his lungs seize, yet his mind does not go blank. It detonates. Possibilities erupt in him like uncontrolled magic, Dumbledore disarming Draco, Draco lowering his wand and sobbing, Snape arriving as savior, as executioner, as something in between. In one echo Dumbledore falls, in another Draco dies. In another the tower itself becomes a vertical grave of broken stone and bone. Each outcome is vivid, complete, clamoring for dominance. This is important. Harry has never stood inside the branching of a moment this large. Until now, his visions have been aftermaths, completed stories pressed into his skull, the Pruitts on a kitchen floor, the Longbottoms screaming, his parents' replicas burning in Godric's Hollow while the real body stayed alive in Cornwall. Unseen, the grave was empty. The deaths were already written. He was only the archivist of their endings. But here, on the tower, Dumbledore's death is not yet fixed. And for the first time, Harry realizes he has never seen it. Not once. Not a flash of green, not a broken body in the courtyard, not the old man's glasses lying askew like punctuation at the end of a sentence. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated so much of Harry's life, whose plans had wrapped around him like invisible wards, whose secrets had always arrived before their explanations. The absence of that vision hits harder than any curse. If he did not see this coming, what else is hidden from him? What other deaths stand outside his archive, waiting? When Snape steps onto the tower, the echoes convulse. In one, Snape shields Dumbledore. In another, he kills Draco. In another, he turns his wand on the Death Eaters and dies for it. Harry watches all three, and more besides, flicker through the air between them like ghostly replicas of a choice not yet made. And then Snape looks at him. He should not be able to. Harry is invisible, frozen, pressed against stone, yet Snape's eyes find the darkness where Harry stands. There is knowledge there. Recognition, a grim acknowledgement of the boy whose nights are full of other people's endings. Snape knows about the visions. Snape knows what this will do. The wand rises. The decision collapses. The killing curse is not a sound but a verdict. Harry watches the fall in a slow, obscene clarity. The arc of Dumbledore's body, the way the moonlight catches on silver hair, the soft, almost tender separation of wand from hand. He notes the angle of the drop, the distance to the ground, the exact point where life leaves the body. His mind, treacherously disciplined, files each detail where it belongs. Another entry, another death, catalogued. He hates himself for it, for turning this man, this mentor, into data, for treating the moment as material rather than miracle. Later, at the foot of the astronomy tower, with Dumbledore's body laid out like an answer to a question he never thought to ask, Harry makes a new plan. The stone beneath his knees feels like the floor of a grave. He understands, with a clarity that feels like prophecy, that this will be the last death he watches without moving. From now on, he decides, he will not wait for visions to arrive. He will hunt them. He will seek the deaths before they harden into memory, follow the faintest tremor of Voldemort's magic back to its source, and cut it there, at the root. Because if Dumbledore can die outside his sight, then the story is no longer safe. The pattern is broken. And somewhere, beyond this night, another death is already gathering itself, just out of view, testing the limits of what Harry is willing to do to stop it. On the run, the war shrinks to a tent, a fire, and Harry's maps. He draws them at night. Short strokes, sharp lines, forests first. A stand of pines where a man in silver mask falls wordless. A clearing where green light passes through a woman's open mouth and leaves her body oddly composed, as if merely sleeping. The grave was empty. The page is not. Every new line is another remembered death pinned to parchment. This is important. He is not guessing in the dark. He is charting a private graveyard only he has walked. By day, Hermione spreads books and stolen reports around his sketches, tracing his rough shapes against known Death Eater raids, ministry records, half-legible prophet clippings. A ruined manor that appears in 3 different visions becomes, under her quill, a probable Gaunt estate. A lakeside house where a curse rebounds and kills the caster becomes a candidate for a hidden Horcrux, because the magic feels wrong even in memory, stretched thin over something anchored there. The pattern interrupt is simple and devastating. Harry is their marauder's map now, but what he tracks is not footsteps. It is endings. Hermione is the one who finally names what has been lurking beneath his descriptions. She listens as he recalls, haltingly, the night Voldemort killed a collector purely to take a goblet. The strange exhilaration in the Dark Lord's mind when he turned a ring on his finger and felt his soul catch. She hears the way Harry's voice changes when he says, very quietly, that the Locket murder felt different, threaded with possessiveness rather than triumph. She looks up, pale. Harry, his emotions. You knew how he felt each time. That means we can predict what he would choose to keep himself alive. Not Dumbledore, who had followed symbols and educated guesswork. Not Hagrid, who had trusted stories and giants' tales. They have something colder, the remembered texture of a murderer's joy. Ron cannot bear how ordinary Harry sounds when he explains it. This is important too. Harry will circle a village on the map and say, almost absently, that 2 Aurors died there, that one tried to crawl back to his partner before the second curse hit. He will gesture at a cliff and mention a boy pushed without a wand, because terror tastes different when the killing curse is not used. Every strategic decision acquires weight. If they go to the seaside cave, they are walking into the echo of a child's death. If they break into Gringotts, they are stepping over goblins who once lay broken beneath dragonfire. The plan is never abstract again. When Xenophilius speaks of the Deathly Hallows, of mastering death with 3 perfect objects, Harry feels only a tired recoil. Objects that promise dominion over the grave are a bitter joke to a boy who has been dominated by other people's last breaths since childhood. Lily was a charms prodigy, and even she had not tried to conquer death. She had bent her magic toward delay, toward protection, toward imperfect survival. So Harry listens to the story of the Hallows and thinks, I have already worn an invisible shroud made of other people's endings. Why would I seek another? By the time he traces the final line between his visions and Voldemort's hiding places, the truth settles with terrible clarity. There is no charm that will silence the link. No hallow that will untangle his scar. The only way to end the visions is to end the one who creates them. Not by hiding, not by running, by walking eyes open into the path of the last killing curse and refusing finally to look away. He does not run. He does not bargain. He walks. Out of the shattered castle, through corridors that still remember screams, Harry steps into the night carrying an invisible procession. This is important. Every death he has ever watched moves with him, layered over the present like translucent replicas of older, darker nights. His father's fall at the bottom of the stairs in Godric's Hollow. His mother's body crumpled before the crib. Cedric's slack face in the graveyard. Dumbledore tumbling from the tower. Each step forward echoes with a last breath he has already heard. The forest waits, a black mouth at the edge of the grounds. He knew this path long before his feet touched it. He has walked into this grave of trees 100 times in visions not his own, watching giants fall, centaurs die, Death Eaters dragged down under green light. Now the story has turned, and for the first time, the one walking to the center of the circle is Harry himself. The snitch is warm in his hand. It is the first thing that ever promised him a future, and now it offers him an end. I open at the close is not metaphor tonight, it is a precise charm. A line of magic that Lily would have admired. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere far from this forest, her work has tracked every spike of his fear. Every nightmare of someone else's death she will know, the moment the metal parts. When it does, the resurrection stone is not revelation, it is recognition. A temptation, yes, but also a kind of closure he has never been granted. For years the dead have arrived screaming, frozen at the instant of impact. Now, when he turns the stone and they come, they are the same people he watched die. James with his hair still untidy from that final duel, Lily with the fear set to her jaw from the crib, Sirius in the same robes he wore when he fell through the veil, Lupin in the battle-torn coat from the last time Harry saw him alive. but they are quiet. Whole, the grave was empty not because they never died, but because the story he carried of their deaths was only half the truth. Not Dumbledore, who had fallen with a plan on his lips. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from ruins and would carry him back. Not Sirius, who had vanished mid-laugh. None of them were only their endings. Their presence does not take away his fear. It renders it irrelevant. For once, the killing curse ahead of him is not another window into someone else's extinction. It is his. There will be no waking up gasping, no sudden lurch back into a body that must keep watching. There is, to his own surprise, a thread of relief in that. In the clearing, Voldemort raises the wand. Harry does not close his eyes. The words are familiar. The light is familiar. Avada Kedavra, and the world becomes green from the other side at last, closing the loop that began in a cupboard where a boy listened to deaths that were not yet done. He has watched everyone else die. Now, finally, he joins the line he has been following his entire life. There is light. There is absence. There is the soft, echoing hush of a place between. The grave was empty, and now so is the sky above him. No forest, no wandlight. Only a white mist resolving into arches and rails, and the faint, impossible smell of steam. Harry stands in King's Cross that is not King's Cross, barefoot on a floor that is not cold, and for the first time since the cupboard, there is no scream in his ears. Only the quiet. It is almost worse than the noise. Dumbledore is waiting, as if this were all part of a plan. Of course it was. Harry looks at him, at the half-moon spectacles and a familiar, infuriating calm, and something in him that died in the clearing flares back to life. Why did I see them? His voice does not echo, but it carries. All of them. Every time he used that curse, you knew. Why? This is important. Not a polite question, not a boy asking a headmaster for another piece of a story. This is a demand from someone who has walked to his own death with his eyes open and refuses now to be treated as a child. Dumbledore's gaze is grave. Because, Harry, you were never only yourself. He gestures, and beneath a nearby bench something shudders. The small, flayed thing, the parasite that whimpers without sound, lies where the luggage should be. Harry recognizes it instinctively, the way one recognizes a scar by touch alone. The fragment of Voldemort's soul, Dumbledore says. In our world, it made you a Horcrux in truth. Here it did more. It was both anchor and antenna. His magic, especially the killing curse, left a particular resonance. Each time he cast it, the echo sought its own. It sought him. It sought Harry. Every Avada Kedavra, Dumbledore continues, reverberated along that connection. You did not simply dream of death. You were bound to each victim by the path the curse carved through the world. You watched because the piece of him in you insisted on watching. Harry remembers the Longbottom's torture burning behind his eyes years before he knew their names. The Pruitt brothers falling beneath green light he could not yet spell. His parents dying again and again in a cottage whose grave outside held only charm-wrought replicas. Lily was a charms prodigy, and still her son had been shackled to the very magic she died to defy. By choosing to die, Dumbledore says softly, you have severed it. The protection your mother wove, the choice you made to walk into that clearing, they have burned the tether. What lies under that bench is the last remnant of the thing that forced you to watch so much suffering. Gratitude rises first, sharp and startling. The nights will be his again. No more strangers' last breaths. No more green light behind his eyelids. Then the anger comes. "Colder, you could have told me," he says. "Any of you. Not Dumbledore, who had a plan for every year of his life. Not Hagrid, who had carried him from the ruins. Not Sirius, who had sworn he would tell Harry everything. No one thought this was important?" Dumbledore bows his head. "I feared what knowledge might do to you. I feared you would see yourself only as his vessel, his grave, and yet you turned the curse against him again and again. You used what tormented you to hunt his Horcruxes, to read the shape of his war. That was never my plan. That was yours. There is, beneath the fury, a quiet, stubborn pride. He had been the boy who watched everyone die, and he had made that watching into a weapon." Dumbledore's eyes lift. "You may go on from here," he says, "or you may go back. If you return, you will return alone in your mind. No more nightly parade of the dead, only your own thoughts, your own choices." "Do you wish to go back, Harry?" Harry looks at the misted arches, at the broken thing beneath the bench, at the tracks that lead somewhere and nowhere. For the first time, life does not mean returning to the cupboard of other people's endings. He takes a breath. The station hums, waiting, and in that suspended heartbeat, something else begins to move in the white distance, as if the world he thinks he knows is not the only one offering him a way home. He chooses the way back. The white world folds. The station dissolves. The hum becomes a roar, stone and shouting, and the crack of breaking magic, and Harry is falling into his own body on the floor of the forest. He opens his eyes to pain and ash and the circle of Death Eaters closing in, and for a heartbeat he braces for it. The rush, the flood, the chorus of other people's endings that has always followed Voldemort's spells. Nothing comes. No mother screaming. No man begging. No child choking on green light that is not meant for them. The grave was empty in his mind. This is important. For 16 years, every time Voldemort's wand moved in hatred, some echo had torn through him, flashes of the Pruitt's last stand, of the Longbottom's torture, of nameless muggles dying in streets he had never walked. Now, surrounded by the very wizards who have fed that river of images, he hears only the present, the rasp of robes, the crackle of the Dark Lord's voice, the distant, desperate sounds of the castle still fighting. When he breaks free, when he runs under the cloak and the battle erupts again around him, the silence in his skull holds. Spells slam into shields. Giants bellow. Stone explodes in showers of dust. And in the middle of it all, his mind is a clear, cold corridor instead of a screaming hall of portraits. Without the visions, he can see. He sees the weak points in the defenders' line at the main doors and sends the Patronus message that turns McGonagall's retreat into a feint. He sees the way the spiders are driving students toward the courtyard and redirects Hagrid with a single shouted instruction. Not Hagrid, who had once carried him from a ruined cottage. Hagrid now, who becomes a wall of flesh and courage where Harry points him. He is not drowning in the memory of other battles while this one unfolds. He is present. Strategy, not survival. Choice, not reflex. The plan his parents lived to give him, finally has space inside his head. When the circle forms in the Great Hall, when the last duel begins, the silence sharpens. Voldemort stands alone, wand raised, and Harry understands with a sudden, surgical clarity that the Dark Lord is alone in his own mind as well. No boy watching through the scar, no unwilling witness cataloguing every crime, no invisible jury. Isolation, Harry realizes, is a kind of weakness. Who challenges a story you never have to share? He speaks the truth of the Elder Wand. He names Snape's loyalty, Dumbledore's design, his mother's protection. Not Dumbledore, who had kept so much from him, Dumbledore as a man whose plan is finally complete. The Hall listens. Voldemort does not. The last curses fly. Green meets green. Power meets ownership. The wand knows its master, and a killing curse turns. Voldemort falls. No echo follows. No vision, no imprint, no dragged-out replay of terror. There is only the thud of a body on stone and the sharp intake of hundreds of breaths as the chain that began in Godric's Hollow snaps with an almost audible break. Later, in the same hall, among the wounded and the dead, Harry walks between bodies that will never speak to him in dreams. Fred, Remus, Tonks, others whose final moments he will never see. Grief is a weight, solid and clean. It does not come with pictures. He will mourn them. He will remember them. But for the first time since he was a child in a cupboard, he knows he will not be forced to relive their last seconds every night. The silence is not mercy. It is simply life, returned, and somewhere beyond the shattered windows, as dawn edges over the forbidden forest, that quiet begins to feel like a future he might dare to enter. The quiet does not end with dawn. It follows him to Hogwarts, to the burrow, to the crooked little house that will one day be called home. The visions stop, and in their absence, something inside Harry feels flayed open. For 10 years he had a ritual he never chose. Sleep, fall, plunge into another person's ending. Wake with a scream already in his throat. Now, in the months after the battle, he lies awake in a bed that is finally his, staring at a ceiling that does not drip blood or echo with the Cruciatus. Nothing comes. No deaths. No borrowed last breaths. The grave inside his mind is suddenly, impossibly, still. This is important. Because the silence is not peace. It is disorientation. Who is Harry Potter if he is not the boy who knew how everyone died? He tries, at first, to endure it alone. Habit is a kind of curse, not Dumbledore, who had made secrets into a strategy, not Hagrid, who had carried him from one war into another, not Sirius, who had been a promise of family and then a fall through a veil. None of them had taught him what to do with an unhaunted night. So he does the thing he has never truly done. He asks for help. Hermione arrives with parchment already inked, with references to obscure St. Mungo's case studies on prophetic trauma and curse echo insomnia. She speaks of mind-healing charms, of rituals to gently separate his magic from the scar's old pathway, of healers who have seen soldiers wake, convinced they are still under the killing curse. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Hermione's careful, relentless research, Harry hears an echo of that same furious tenderness, that same refusal to let suffering be inevitable. At St. Mungo's, healer Iodele listens more than she diagnoses. She teaches him grounding charms that taste of peppermint and rain, slow breathing paired with a soft blue light that pulses at the edge of his vision instead of the sickly green he has always known. He learns to say the words out loud, "I watch them die, all of them." But recovery is not only magic, it is pilgrimage. He goes to graves, real ones, not the invisible markers in his dreams. The Pruitt brothers, whose last stand he had seen from behind their eyes. The Longbottom's empty stone, because the people they had been would never come back from St. Mungo's ward. The grave was empty, and that absence is its own kind of epitaph. He reads biographies of people he had only known in the instant of their unmaking. Order members whose replicas of courage in his mind are now fleshed out with childhood anecdotes, disastrous first duels, ridiculous middle names. He visits families. He listens to stories about favorite sweets, terrible jokes, the way someone always hummed when nervous. He lets the dead expand from a single terrible frame into entire reels of life. There are milestones so small they feel almost foolish. The first night he wakes and realizes with a jolt that morning has arrived without interruption. The first time fireworks crack over the Weasley orchard and his hand does not fly to his scar. The first evening, when Ginny sits opposite him, the room quiet, and he tells her everything. Not the edited version. The truth of being 10 years old and drowning nightly in other people's endings. She does not look away. That, too, is healing. In time, he makes a choice. He will remember them, all of them, on his own terms, not as endless loops of terror, but as stories with beginnings, middles, and ends. The plan is simple and impossibly hard: to let his mind be a place where the dead are honored, not imprisoned. Voldemort's shadow recedes, inch by inch, not with a final spell, but with the slow reclamation of memory. And somewhere between graves and laughter, between St. Mungo's corridors and the Burrow's kitchen table, Harry learns to sleep in a world where the only dreams that come are his. The wizarding world keeps its favorite story. It is clean. It is bright. It fits on a chocolate frog card. There was a boy. A curse rebounded. The Dark Lord fell. The grave was empty of his power, and the child lived. Years later, the same boy stood in a forest and walked to his death with his eyes open. That is the legend that is told in classrooms and common rooms, in the hushed awe of those who were not there. This is important, because in this world, the legend is still told exactly that way. Not Dumbledore, who had watched Harry's name become a symbol, not McGonagall, who had seen him leave Privet Drive with a trunk and an owl, not Hagrid, who had broken down that door and said, "You're a wizard," could speak the darker truth aloud, that before Hogwarts, before wands and houses and house points, Harry Potter was already living in a war. The public story calls him the boy who lived. The hidden story names him something harsher, the boy who watched. The child who, at 8, knew the sound of Fabian Pruitt's last breath as clearly as other children knew a lullaby. The boy who woke with the taste of Bellatrix's laughter in his mouth, who saw Frank and Alice Longbottom's minds breaking like glass and could do nothing but clutch his pillow and try not to scream. The courage that emerges from that is not innocence stumbling into danger. It is a slow, terrible apprenticeship to death. When he steps between Quirrell and the stone, when he flies after the snitch with a troll still cooling in the dungeons, he is not fearless because he does not understand. He is fearless because he understands exactly what happens if he fails, because he has already watched it happen to others. Viewed from that angle, Dumbledore's plan curdles. The headmaster who, in canon, gambled on love and secrecy, now becomes a man who looked at a child haunted by visions and thought, "We can use this." He leaves Harry in a cupboard under the stairs, knowing the boy wakes shaking. He delays explanations, knowing that each unspoken word makes Harry doubt his own sanity. He lets Snape listen to descriptions of deaths Snape helped cause, turning guilt into a tool as surely as any wand. Not Dumbledore, who had always told himself that the greater good required hard choices, stops to ask whether turning a seer child into an intelligence asset crosses a line that no victory can justify. In this light, Harry's heroism shifts. It is less about prophecy, less about a destined duel in a graveyard, and more about endurance. He does not face death once in a forest, he faces it every night and still walks back into the fight. He chooses again and again to stand in front of others, knowing exactly what it costs. And the story itself changes shape. The canon tale is not erased, it is refracted. The same events, the same spells, the same names carved into marble at Hogwarts now reveal another facet of the gem. That the price of victory is not only counted in bodies on a battlefield, but in the mind of one boy who carried them all. But if the boy who watched is the secret center of this war, then one question still hangs unasked. What happens when the weapon finally learns who put it in his hands? What happens when the weapon begins to ask whether it ever wanted to be a weapon at all? When the boy who watched looks back at a childhood of graves in his head and realizes that knowledge, for him, was not a gift but a wound that never closed. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but in Harry's mind there were hundreds. This is important. Canon touches the question only lightly. How much should a child be told about war, about murder, about the dead who will never come home? In this world, the question is answered with brutal clarity. Harry is not merely told, he is shown. Night after night, his scar opens and he relives the Pruitt brothers falling beneath green light, the Longbottom's torture, his mother's last stand. At what point does knowledge itself become a kind of violence, an assault carried out with memory instead of wands? Foresight, here, does not mean control. It means witness. His magic drags each killing into his dreams, but does not give him the power to alter the ending. He knows a name, a face, a scream. He does not know where they are, how to reach them, how to change the story before it hardens into history. The vision of a man begging in a rain-soaked alley does not come with a map. The glimpse of a girl in Slytherin colors dying in a forest clearing does not include a date. Prophecy in this universe is not a script. It is a series of accusations that offer no instructions for atonement. This is the pattern interrupt that defines him. In most tales, the seer is given a task and a path. Here, he is given only the task, no path. And so agency becomes something smaller, more desperate, the choice to remember, the choice to speak, the choice to sit by a hospital bed because he once saw that person die alone. Love changes, too. In canon, Lily's magic is a shield against death. In this story, love is not just protection from the grave, but accompaniment through it. Lily was a charms prodigy, and her failed plan to spare him this burden is one more invisible sacrifice. James and Lily listening to their son's distant sobs in a cupboard, Sirius offering wordless presents when Harry wakes shaking in the Gryffindor dormitory, Ron and Hermione sitting up with him as he recites names they have never heard. They cannot take the visions away. They can choose not to let him stand inside them alone. Around him, adults make his trauma into strategy. Not Dumbledore, who had always hoarded information, now quietly times his moves to the rhythm of Harry's nightmares. Not Hagrid, who had unknowingly delivered the boy and the burden in the same night. Not Sirius, who had once sworn that no child of James Potter's would be used as a tool, and now finds himself urging Harry to describe in detail the way a certain Death Eater died. The ethics are ugly because they are familiar. How often do societies ask survivors to relive their worst moments so that others may be persuaded, mobilized, comforted? And once you have seen this Harry, you cannot unsee him in canon. The boy staring at the mirror of Erisede is no longer simply longing for family. He is measuring the silent, peaceful replicas of people whose real deaths he has watched 100 times. The grave at the end of Book 4 is no longer the beginning of his education in loss. It is merely the first time the wizarding world realizes he has been learning this lesson alone for years. What does it say about us that we prefer the cleaner version? The one where the child hero does not wake up already fluent in the language of war and sacrifice. And if this darker reading feels truer, then what kind of ending could possibly be enough for a boy who has carried every death before Hogwarts even knew his name? So we come back to the beginning. A cupboard under the stairs, a thin mattress, a boy who does not know the word Horcrux, who has never heard the name Voldemort, waking up gasping from strangers' deaths. The grave was empty for him in more ways than one. He has no headstone to visit, no bodies to mourn, only this relentless magic that drags him through the last seconds of other people's lives and leaves him shaking in the dark. From there, the line is terrible and clear. From a cupboard where he watches James and Lily die again and again in his sleep, to a first-year corridor where he confronts Quirrell already knowing the color of his burned flesh and the way his lungs will seize when Voldemort leaves him. This is important. He does not stumble into heroism. He walks toward a death he has already seen and chooses it anyway. Later, in the Shrieking Shack, the pattern repeats. Harry has watched Peter Pettigrew die a dozen different ways in his visions, blasted apart by a curse, strangled by a silver hand, left face down in some nameless forest. He knew that sparing Pettigrew would not spare the world from Pettigrew's eventual death. The charm of mercy here is not that it saves a life, but that it alters a story. He chooses to let the coward live, knowing that this replica of a man will one day be the one who fails Voldemort at a crucial moment. And then the forest. Always the forest. By the time he walks between those trees, this Harry has catalogued a battlefield's worth of endings. He has seen Cedric fall, Sirius vanish, Dumbledore crumple from a tower he once watched only in dreams. Not Dumbledore, who had spent years believing he was the only one with a full map of necessary losses. Not Hagrid, who had carried him out of fire and will carry him out of the forest, believing the boy in his arms has gone still. Harry walks forward, knowing precisely how his own body will drop. He goes anyway. Yet the story does not end on a battlefield. It ends, if it can be called an ending, in something quieter and stranger, a young man who has finally earned the right to an ordinary night's sleep. A kitchen table, a child's laugh, a scar that no longer burns when someone dies. Lily was a charms prodigy, but no charm she ever crafted is as miraculous as the simple fact that her son is still capable of love after all he has seen. Because this version is not about power. It is about endurance, about a boy who refuses to let death define him even when it fills his dreams, who understands the grave better than anyone and still insists on living. So the lens turns, briefly, on us. If you could see every death tied to one person, could you still stand in their way without letting hatred hollow you out? Which Harry feels more human to you? The child who learns about death as he goes, or the one who arrives already fluent in it? And why? Sit with that discomfort for a moment. Let it linger, the way his visions did, as we step into what comes after a life built on watching others fall. Sit with it, and then, for a moment, step closer. If Harry walks into first year already fluent in death, you know he does not stay that way alone. So imagine, carefully, the moment Ron and Hermione are finally allowed inside the graveyard of his mind. Not a vague confession, not a half-swallowed "I have bad dreams," but the full catalogue. The Longbottom's torture as he saw it, the Pruitts falling, James laughing one second and gone the next. How does Ron react when he realizes the boy in his compartment seat has watched his brothers die in visions that have not yet come to pass? Hermione, who believes in books and rules and the safety of well-ordered knowledge, is suddenly staring at a friend whose magic has rewritten the boundaries of cause and effect. This is important. Does she try to research the charm thread in his scar until her eyes burn, or does she simply sit beside him and listen as he describes, in precise detail, the sound of Lily's last breath that he never actually heard? And Ron, who jokes when he is afraid. What happens when there is nothing to joke about, because the grave was empty in Harry's dreams long before he knew what a grave was? Carry that forward to Severus Snape. In this version, he cannot escape the echo of Lily's death because Harry carries it behind his eyes every time he looks at him. What if, one night, Snape encounters Harry mid-vision and realizes with a clarity that cuts that the boy has been reliving Lily's end since childhood? Does he apologize, not for his love, not for his bitterness, but for the specific cruelty of those death echoes? Not Sirius, he might begin in canon, but here it is. Not Snape, who had delivered the prophecy. And he knows Harry has seen that too in the comments. Continue the story. Which death vision do you think would haunt Harry the most? The first time he watches his parents die from outside his own body, or the moment he sees a stranger fall because of a choice he has not yet made? Which canon scene do you most want to see rewritten through this lens? A different Philosopher's Stone night. A new graveyard duel, or a final battle where Harry already knows every name that will be carved into stone? Share this with the people in your life who love darker, more psychologically tangled what-ifs. The ones who understand that this is a thought experiment, not a replacement for canon. Lily was a charms prodigy, but even she could not design a world without consequence. We are only asking what the magic of foresight would do to a boy already marked by sacrifice. There are other shadows waiting. A world where Neville receives the visions instead and grows up fearing the moment his courage will kill someone. A world where Voldemort himself is forced, before every curse, to watch every life he has already ruined, held motionless in the theatre of his own mind. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated a plan, not Hagrid, who had carried the child from the wreckage. Not any of them are spared when foresight becomes a mirror. If you wish to keep walking these darker paths through familiar stories, subscribe and remain with us as we turn the pensieve again. And ask yourself, quietly, as the screen fades, if you could see every death your choices might cause, what would you change and what would you still do, knowing the price?